Appear as you wish to be perceived, then become it. When you walk into a room, speak into a board meeting, or confront a personal challenge, don't just hope for confidence. Wear it like armor. Stand with the quiet force of someone who already knows the outcome. Machiavelli knew that perception shapes reality, and that the mask of strength becomes real when worn with purpose. Welcome to 3 hours of powerful confidence techniques from Machiavelli, a deep dive into timeless strategies drawn from one of history's most controversial yet insightful minds. Whether you're leading a team, building your legacy, or reclaiming your voice later in life, these teachings are not just philosophy. They're practical tools for everyday power. This isn't about arrogance. It's about reclaiming the inner authority life may have chipped away at. It's about learning how to lead yourself first, so others follow naturally. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments which philosopher you want us to explore next. Master your face. Your expression is your first line of defense. In every interaction, before you speak a word, your face speaks for you. Your expression, your eyes, the tension in your jaw, the lift or fall of your brow, these reveal volumes. Machiavelli understood that a ruler who cannot control his face gives away his thoughts before the game even begins. Master your face, because your expression is your first line of defense. You may have the best plan, the most solid argument, or the strongest position, but if your face betrays anxiety, frustration, insecurity, or hesitation, you've already begun to lose influence. Because people read signals faster than they process words, and they trust what they see more than what they hear. Think about the leaders, executives, or even personal mentors you've respected. What did their face look like in crisis? Calm, focused, unmoved. That wasn't coincidence. It was control. They knew that the face they showed the world set the emotional tone for the room. Machiavelli would tell you that emotion is not weakness, but letting it leak through your expression without intention is. Your face should be your armor, unreadable when it needs to be, warm when it's strategic, cold when it sends a necessary message. You control it, not the other way around. This isn't about becoming robotic. It's about precision, self-mastery. It's about knowing when to smile to lower resistance, and when not to. When to lock eyes and when to break them. When to raise an eyebrow, tilt your head, or stay utterly still to let others speak themselves into nervousness. Practice it. In meetings, in mirrors, in moments of tension. Watch how quickly control returns to you when you stop broadcasting everything you feel. When your face becomes a tool of intention, not a canvas of vulnerability. In Machiavelli's world, and in ours, the person who controls their expression controls the tone of the interaction, and often the outcome. Withhold just enough to stay unpredictable. There's comfort in being known, in being consistent, open, and transparent. But comfort is not always power. Machiavelli teaches us a subtler law. Withhold just enough to stay unpredictable. Predictability breeds complacency. Once people think they have you figured out, your routines, your reactions, your thresholds, they begin to maneuver around you, not always maliciously, but naturally. They anticipate you. They adjust to you, and you slowly lose the edge. Unpredictability, on the other hand, is unsettling. It demands attention. It keeps others slightly off balance, in a way that earns respect, curiosity, and caution. And you don't need to be erratic to achieve this. You just need to withhold. Not everything. Just enough. Don't always share your schedule. Don't always respond immediately. Don't always speak first. Keep certain plans private. Let people wonder what you're thinking. Let them fill in the blanks. And in that space, you control the narrative. Machiavelli's insight was that power often lies in what is not revealed. If people can't predict your next move, they can't prepare to stop it. If they don't fully understand your motivations, they respect your boundaries more. If you hold a part of yourself back, your intentions, your capabilities, your endgame, you preserve leverage. This applies in leadership, negotiation, even personal relationships. Total transparency can feel virtuous, but it strips away strategic advantage. It gives others a map to your territory. Mystery, when wielded with discipline, earns more control than full disclosure ever could. So practice strategic withholding. Don't lie, don't manipulate, but leave space. Let your next move be a question mark in their minds. That tension, that curiosity, that's influence. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. You just need to be less available, less obvious, and less expected. Be calm, be kind, but never be fully known. Decisiveness is dominance. Delay is weakness. In the world of strategy and power, hesitation is a form of surrender. Machiavelli made this clear again and again. Those who hesitate, who linger in the realm of indecision, forfeit control, often without even realizing it. Decisiveness is dominance. Delay is weakness. We often associate leadership with intelligence, charisma, or eloquence. But Machiavelli saw something deeper. The true test of power is the ability to make hard decisions, quickly, clearly, and with the courage to accept the consequences, because inaction speaks just as loudly as action. And when a leader fails to choose, the world chooses for them. Now, decisiveness doesn't mean recklessness. It doesn't mean rushing blindly. It means clarity. It means knowing when to act and having the spine to follow through. It means trusting your judgment enough to pull the trigger while others are still debating. In life and in business, most opportunities have an expiration date. And while we weigh the pros and cons, while we overanalyze and wait for perfect information, the window closes. The promotion goes to someone else. The market shifts. The rival moves first. And suddenly you're reacting instead of leading. This is why Machiavelli respected boldness. Even a flawed decision, if executed with confidence and speed, often produces better outcomes than a perfect one made too late. People are drawn to leaders who move, who say, "This is the way forward," and take the first step. That movement creates momentum. It builds trust. It gives people something to follow. Hesitation, on the other hand, signals uncertainty. It leaks power. Others begin to doubt, not just your decision-making, but your leadership itself. And doubt is contagious. It spreads to your team, your clients, your family, and eventually, yourself. So how do you build decisiveness? You practice. You shorten your decision-making cycles. You ask yourself, what's the worst-case scenario? Can I survive it? If the answer is yes, move forward. You also simplify. Too much data clouds judgment. Machiavelli believed that complexity often served cowardice. Leaders don't get lost in the weeds, they cut through them. Confidence grows with every clear decision you make, especially the difficult ones. Because each choice is a vote of trust in yourself. In a world of hesitation, the one who acts defines the future. That's the Machiavellian lesson. To lead is to choose. To hesitate is to be led. Guard your reputation as you would your life. Your reputation precedes you. It enters rooms before you speak, influences decisions before you arrive, and shapes outcomes without your direct involvement. Machiavelli understood this with ruthless clarity. Guard your reputation as you would your life. To him, reputation wasn't a luxury. It was a weapon, a form of soft power that, once compromised, often could not be rebuilt. In the high-stakes political world he lived in, reputations were currency. They determined who you could influence, who you could partner with, who would betray you, and who would dare to stand against you. Now, in today's world, we may not face palace intrigue or exile, but the principle holds firm. Your reputation is your first impression and your lasting impression. It determines how seriously you're taken, whether your voice holds weight, and how much room you're given to lead. And here's the critical part. Reputation isn't just about what's true, it's about what's believed. Machiavelli was keenly aware that perception, not reality, is what moves people, which means guarding your reputation involves not just acting with integrity, but curating your visibility, what you say, how you carry yourself, and how others interpret your choices. This doesn't mean being fake. It means being deliberate. You don't need to impress everyone, only the right ones. You don't need to reveal every detail, only what supports your image. You must be the editor of your own story. If you don't define yourself, others will. Think of your reputation like a fortress. It takes time to build and moments to lose. One careless word, one unguarded action, and years of credibility can collapse. That's why Machiavelli advised rulers to be strategic in even their smallest behaviors. Because everything communicates something. So how do you guard it? Start with consistency. Let your actions match your words over time. Keep your promises. Speak with intention. And never let short-term emotions sabotage long-term trust. Don't overshare. Don't apologize for your strength. Don't align with people who erode your credibility by association. And when your reputation is attacked, which it will be, respond with calm strength. Defend what matters. Ignore what doesn't. Sometimes silence says more than 1,000 rebuttals. Your reputation, once solidified, becomes a protective shield. It opens doors before you knock. It draws allies without effort. It gives you leverage in moments where others have none. Machiavelli believed that men rise and fall not by talent alone, but by how they are seen. So guard your name, guard your word. And never forget, your reputation is not vanity. It is strategy. People follow those who act, not those who wait. Action is the currency of leadership. Machiavelli believed that decisive, bold action was not only the foundation of power, but also the clearest signal of leadership. In The Prince, he warns that hesitation breeds doubt, and that those who wait for perfect conditions often find themselves swept aside by those willing to take imperfect action. For those of us in the second half of life, this message resonates with a different depth. Perhaps you've seen opportunities come and go. Maybe you've hesitated out of fear, uncertainty, or the weight of responsibility. But Machiavelli would argue, it's never about the perfect moment. It's about making the moment yours. People follow those who move forward, even if the path isn't crystal clear. They are drawn to momentum, to the sense that someone is going somewhere. This philosophy isn't about recklessness, it's about rejecting paralysis. It's about choosing motion over stillness when leadership is needed. In politics, business, and personal life, those who wait to act until everything is aligned often miss their moment. Consider how history celebrates the doers, not the planners. People remember those who charged ahead, Churchill in crisis, Lincoln in war, or even CEOs who disrupted entire industries by taking risks. Machiavelli saw action as a tool for shaping destiny rather than waiting to be shaped by it. To him, fortune was like a woman, one who favored the bold. In other words, life rewards initiative. Even mistakes can inspire confidence when they are made decisively. In contrast, the cautious may appear wise at first, but over time they seem indecisive, fearful, or even weak. In your daily life, this principle can play out in subtle but powerful ways. Speaking up in a meeting when something feels off, initiating a tough conversation at home, or starting the project you've thought about for years. When others see you act, they naturally look to you for leadership. It builds trust, even if the outcome isn't immediate. Why? Because people crave certainty, and nothing signals certainty more than action. Acting doesn't mean knowing every step. It means taking one step. That one move signals to others that you're leading, not waiting. It commands respect, builds confidence, and sets you apart in a world that too often rewards overthinking. Control your emotions, or they will control your fate. Machiavelli never shied away from the truth of human nature. In his eyes, rulers who allowed their emotions to dictate their decisions were destined to fail. For him, power belonged to those who mastered their inner world, because external control always starts within. This is more than stoicism. It's strategy. Emotions are real, valid, and deeply human. But left unchecked, they become weapons turned inward. Anger clouds judgment. Fear stifles opportunity. Pride blinds us to threats, and sentimentality, while often noble, can make us vulnerable in ruthless environments. Machiavelli advised leaders to appear emotional when useful, but never to become emotional in truth. To him, emotional control wasn't about becoming cold or robotic. It was about choosing response over reaction. In his view, the ruler who maintains composure, especially under pressure, gains a reputation for strength, reliability, and wisdom. Think about historical leaders who guided others through chaos. What they all had in common wasn't detachment. It was clarity under fire. For the mature individual, this advice has even more weight. By now, you've likely seen the consequences of emotional decisions. Relationships strained by reactive anger, business deals lost to pride, or opportunities missed due to fear. Machiavelli reminds us that while emotions are part of life, they should never be the ruler of our choices. Emotional discipline is a form of freedom. Freedom from regret, from missteps, from self-sabotage. To live this principle is to slow down when your blood is hot. It's to take a breath when your ego feels bruised. It's to pause before answering an insult, knowing that retaliation might cost more than it's worth. This isn't weakness. It's power in its highest form. It means stepping back, seeing the game for what it is, and making moves based on reason, not impulse. And here's the deeper truth. The more control you exhibit, the more control others give you. Emotional steadiness builds trust. When people know you won't be easily rattled, they feel safe following you. They know that in storms you won't panic. In crises, you won't implode. You become the anchor, and anchors don't scream. They steady the ship. Emotional mastery doesn't happen overnight. It's a daily practice, and it doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you control how you act on what you feel. Machiavelli believed that our fate is not shaped by feelings, but by the decisions we make despite them. Never reveal your full intentions. Let mystery be your ally. To Machiavelli, power and perception are twins, and nothing enhances both like strategic concealment. He believed that a ruler or any individual seeking influence should never lay all their cards on the table. Why? Because clarity makes you predictable, and predictability is a liability in a competitive world. When others know exactly what you plan, they can block you. When they don't, they hesitate. That hesitation is your advantage. A touch of mystery keeps people guessing, and guessing keeps them off balance. This isn't deception for the sake of dishonesty. It's discretion for the sake of control. Think of it like chess. If your opponent knows every move you're going to make, you've already lost. But if you act with purpose, conceal your endgame, and keep them uncertain, you gain the upper hand. Machiavelli's famous phrase, "the ends justify the means," ties into this idea. What matters is not how open you are, but how effective you are in reaching your goal. This principle is deeply relevant in a world obsessed with oversharing. We're encouraged to be transparent, to speak our truth, to expose our inner workings in every conversation. But while vulnerability can build intimacy, it must be managed. Oversharing weakens your position. Not everyone deserves access to your full map. A seasoned leader, whether in a boardroom or in life, understands the power of silence, suggestion, and strategic vagueness. There's also a psychological edge to mystery. People are drawn to what they don't fully understand. Think about figures in history, business, or entertainment who maintained an air of mystique. It didn't make them less influential. It made them more magnetic. We're wired to fill in blanks, and those blanks often amplify our perception of power. In your personal life, withholding your full intentions doesn't mean being manipulative. It means being thoughtful. If you're negotiating, reveal only what supports your outcome. If you're planning a transition, don't announce it before the groundwork is solid. If you're navigating conflict, speak with purpose, not full disclosure. This technique also builds protection. When others don't fully understand your motivations, they're less likely to sabotage you. They can't argue with plans they don't fully grasp. They can't manipulate goals they can't define. Machiavelli would say, clarity is for the results, not the journey. So ask yourself, do you always tell people what you're thinking? Do you feel compelled to explain every decision? What would happen if you simply acted and let results speak instead? Mystery, when paired with integrity and action, becomes one of your strongest allies. It's not about hiding who you are. It's about guarding your advantage. Machiavelli understood that the path to confidence is not loud or exposed. It is silent, strategic, and deeply effective. Speak less than you know. Listen more than they expect. There is a quiet kind of confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. This principle, speak less than you know, listen more than they expect, isn't just about humility, it's about control. Niccolò Machiavelli, the Florentine philosopher and political strategist, understood better than most that power isn't always loud. In fact, real power often speaks in whispers, if it speaks at all. When you speak less than you know, you create an aura of depth. People begin to wonder what you do know, and in their curiosity, they start to assign more value to your words when you do choose to speak. This is a technique not just for protecting your position, but also for strengthening it. In courtrooms, in boardrooms, even in families, those who speak sparingly but with precision often command more respect than those who flood every silence. But this isn't about manipulation in a sinister sense. It's about mastering the rhythm of conversation and understanding that silence isn't empty. It's full of potential. Think of every conversation as a chessboard. If you speak too quickly, you show your pieces too soon. If you listen, you begin to map out your opponent's strategy, their strengths, and even their insecurities. Listening gives you leverage. Listening more than people expect also throws them off balance in a powerful way. In a world saturated with self-promotion, we are not used to being deeply listened to. When someone genuinely listens, not to respond, but to understand, they become memorable, they stand out, and they wield more influence than those who talk merely to be heard. Machiavelli often wrote about the concept of virtù, a kind of masculine force or prowess that a ruler must possess. But alongside that, he emphasized prudenza, or prudence, the ability to judge well, to time actions wisely. Listening more than expected feeds prudenza. It gives you the raw material, people's fears, desires, motivations that you can use to navigate any social or political environment. And here's the real power in speaking less. It cannot be used against you. Words once spoken become tools for others, tools to misunderstand, misquote, or weaponize. But what is kept to yourself remains yours. In uncertain situations, this restraint can be your greatest shield. Ultimately, when you discipline yourself to listen more and speak less, You do more than just protect your image. You sharpen your insights, you elevate your presence, and you create space for influence to grow silently but surely. Confidence comes not from certainty, but from action. Many believe that to be confident one must feel sure, but Machiavelli would argue otherwise. He would say, confidence is born not from inner peace or perfect knowledge, but from decisive action in the face of uncertainty. This principle hits especially hard for anyone who's waited for the right moment, the perfect conditions, full clarity, absolute control. The truth? That moment rarely comes, and in waiting for certainty, we often forfeit the very thing we seek, momentum. Machiavelli, writing in the chaotic political landscape of Renaissance Italy, knew that rulers couldn't afford to wait for perfect scenarios. Decisions had to be made amidst danger, betrayal, and shifting loyalties. Action was not a luxury. It was survival. Machiavelli's writings teach us that confidence is a byproduct of movement. Each time you act, despite fear, despite doubt, you tell your brain a new story. You stop reinforcing the narrative of hesitation and start building one of courage. This isn't just theory. It's psychological truth. Action rewires belief. You don't need to feel ready to make a move. The act of moving forward makes you ready. He also recognized that inaction is riskier than action. A leader who hesitates appears weak, and weakness invites attack. The same is true in our personal lives. When you don't take the leap, you signal to others and to yourself that you don't trust your own judgment. That's when confidence erodes. On the other hand, each decision, each bold move, becomes a brick in the foundation of real self-belief. It's important to realize that action doesn't always mean doing something massive. It might mean having a difficult conversation. It might mean finally starting the project you've put off for years. It might even mean walking away from a situation where your value isn't recognized. The scale doesn't matter. What matters is that you move, that you disrupt the paralysis of perfectionism and let the process teach you. Confidence that is built on action is more resilient than confidence built on theory. Why? Because it has evidence. You've already done difficult things. You've already stepped into discomfort and come out stronger. That's something no one can take from you. Not failure, not criticism, not time. So when doubt creeps in, don't wait to feel certain. Choose movement. Choose the step forward. Because while others are stuck wondering what if, you'll be creating a new reality, one decision, one bold action at a time. Align with power, but never be owned by it. This principle strikes at the heart of Machiavelli's philosophy. He lived in a world where allegiances shifted like the wind, where power was both a sword and a snare. To align with power was necessary, but to be owned by it was fatal. So what does this mean for you? It means you must be shrewd in your relationships with authority, whether that's a boss, a business partner, a political group, or even a community. There's wisdom in standing close to influence. But the moment your identity, integrity, or independence is tied entirely to someone else's throne, you've given up something essential: your autonomy. Machiavelli observed that successful leaders often associated with powerful figures, but kept a degree of distance. They aligned for mutual gain, but didn't surrender their will. They served their own long-term vision, not just the interests of the dominant force of the moment. In modern terms, this could apply to corporate life, political strategy, or even family dynamics. Think of the employee who aligns with leadership to grow within an organization, but who maintains their own values and plans. Or the advisor who influences key decisions, but never loses the ability to walk away. These people have something priceless: leverage. When you allow yourself to be owned by power, your options shrink. You begin to censor your thoughts, bend your values, and compromise on the very traits that made you valuable in the first place. Worse, When that power shifts, because it always does, you're left exposed. History is full of examples. Courtiers who fell with the kings they served too loyally. CEOs who collapsed when their companies lost favor. Influencers who sold out to trends and lost credibility. Machiavelli advises rulers to use alliances wisely, but never to trust them blindly. The same applies to you. It's smart to build relationships with those who hold influence, but you must always have a center of gravity that is your own. That center is your principles, your skills, your ability to adapt, and most importantly, your ability to walk away if the price of loyalty becomes too high. To align with power means recognizing when to stand beside it and when to stand apart. It means being the kind of person who's valuable to others because you're independent, not because you're dependent. Confidence thrives in this space because when you know that no alliance defines your worth, you no longer fear losing it. So build connections, align with strength, but always keep a part of yourself that answers to no one but you. That's not just confidence, that's sovereignty. The appearance of virtue is more valuable than virtue itself. In Niccolo Machiavelli's world, virtue was not about moral goodness. It was about effectiveness. When Machiavelli wrote The Prince, he wasn't offering a guide to becoming a saint. He was giving rulers the tools to maintain power in a dangerous, chaotic world. And one of his boldest lessons was this: the appearance of virtue often matters more than truly being virtuous. Why would he say something so provocative? Let's dig into it. Virtue, honesty, generosity, loyalty, courage is often considered essential to being a good person. But Machiavelli knew that people don't actually see what's inside your heart. They respond to what you project. If you can look honest, sound generous, and act courageous, even if you're calculating underneath, most people won't question it. In fact, they'll trust you more. It's not that being truly virtuous is useless, but it can be risky. Imagine a leader who's truly transparent, who shares every weakness, admits every fault, and always puts others before themselves. In theory, that's noble, but in practice, it can be dangerous. Rivals will exploit that honesty. Subordinates may see it as weakness. People may admire it, but they won't follow someone they don't believe can protect them. Now flip the script. A leader who appears just, measured, and fair, who controls their image carefully, may have private ambitions, but the public doesn't know. They inspire trust. They attract allies. They calm fears. That's power. Machiavelli would argue, control the story before others write it for you. Don't leave your character up to interpretation. Create the version of yourself that commands respect, wins confidence, and signals strength. Because perception governs reality, especially in leadership, negotiations, and social dynamics. This doesn't mean living a lie. It means being strategic with your reputation. If you must make a hard decision that would look ruthless on the outside, mask it with compassionate framing. If you must delay a promise, don't just apologize. Explain it as patience or wisdom. People are drawn to certainty, and they rarely look past the surface unless given reason to. Presenting yourself as virtuous gives others confidence in you, and that trust opens doors that raw honesty might slam shut. In today's world, this idea resonates far beyond politics. In business, appearing ethical, even while making tough competitive decisions, builds brand loyalty. In relationships, looking dependable often leads to being given more freedom and trust. Even in parenting or mentoring, your composed presence can matter more than your private doubts. So ask yourself, what signals are you sending? What version of yourself walks into the room before you speak? Are you hoping people see your intentions, or are you shaping how you're perceived? In a world that rewards perception, Machiavelli's advice still echoes. Master the appearance of virtue. Let the image open the doors, and then decide what truth walks through them. Be feared enough to be respected. Loved only when safe. One of Machiavelli's most controversial lessons is also one of his most timeless. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. This idea can sound harsh at first, especially to modern ears. We live in a time where emotional intelligence, kindness, and authenticity are highly valued. But Machiavelli wasn't talking about cruelty. He was talking about control, stability, and power, the cornerstones of effective leadership. And his insight, stripped of its severity, has real-world value for anyone who wants to lead effectively or maintain strong personal boundaries. Here's the essence. Being feared does not mean being a tyrant. It means commanding enough respect that people think twice before crossing you. Fear, in Machiavelli's framework, is not terror, it's the awareness of consequences. Why would fear be more reliable than love? Because love is fickle. It's based on emotion, and emotions shift. People love you when things are good, when you give them what they want, when you're consistent. But the moment circumstances change, when you have to say no, lay down rules, or take something away, that love can vanish. Fear, however, creates a foundation. If people believe you will follow through with consequences, they will act accordingly even when they don't like you. They don't need to agree with your decisions. They just need to respect them. Now, this doesn't mean people should hate you. Machiavelli actually warned against being hated. He drew a very fine line. Be feared, yes, but never cruel, never arbitrary, and never so harsh that people unite against you. Think of it like this. A manager who tries too hard to be loved may become a pushover, constantly bending rules to avoid conflict. Over time, they lose authority. Meanwhile, a manager who is firm but fair, who doesn't tolerate disrespect, who delivers feedback clearly, who protects their standards, may not be everyone's friend, but they are respected. People follow their lead, and often that respect becomes a deeper kind of loyalty. In personal relationships, the lesson still applies, but in a more subtle way. If you're always trying to be liked, always agreeable, always saying yes, you invite people to take advantage. Boundaries get blurred. But if you set firm limits and stick to them, people will respect you more, even if they don't always like it. And in the long run, that kind of relationship is safer, healthier, and more honest. As for love, Machiavelli never said to reject it. He simply said, love is a gift when it's earned safely. You can accept love, even cultivate it, but don't depend on it to lead. Use it when it aligns with strength, not as a substitute for it. So how do you apply this? Be clear, be firm, follow through. Don't fear conflict when it protects your principles. And remember, fear rooted in respect lasts longer than affection rooted in comfort. Stand tall, even when you're unsure. Posture persuades. Machiavelli understood the human psyche far better than many give him credit for. He wasn't just a political theorist, he was a keen observer of human nature. And one thing he recognized early on was the power of presentation. In his time, it was crucial to appear strong even when uncertain. Today, that wisdom still holds. One of the simplest but most powerful confidence techniques? Stand tall, even when you don't feel sure of yourself, because your posture speaks before your words do. Think about it. Before anyone hears what you say or knows what you think, they see how you carry yourself. Do you shrink into yourself, look down, hunch your shoulders, or do you lift your chest, hold your head high, and take up space? This isn't just about body language. It's about projecting a signal that says, I belong here, I am in control, I am not easily shaken. And here's the twist. Acting confident, even when you feel shaky inside, can actually make you more confident. Studies in modern psychology echo this. The power pose theory, while debated, still shows that body language can influence internal states. Stand tall long enough, and your brain begins to believe what your body is saying. Machiavelli would have loved this. He knew that perception shapes power. If you walk into a negotiation, a presentation, or even a family confrontation looking unsure, people read that instantly. They may not consciously register it, but they will sense it and adjust their behavior accordingly. They may speak over you, dismiss your ideas, or press harder against your boundaries. But if you appear grounded, if you hold eye contact, keep your voice steady, and remain still rather than fidgeting, you command space. You subtly tell others, "I know what I'm doing," even if you're working it out as you go. This is especially important for anyone in their 40s to 60s who's reinventing themselves. Maybe you're starting a new career, building something new, or reclaiming your identity after years of putting others first. That internal confidence may still be catching up, but your posture can lead the way. It's not about pretending. It's about guiding your own mind by acting out your desired outcome. Much like an actor stepping into a role, you begin to become the person you portray. So here's how to start. Straighten your spine when you walk into a room. Keep your shoulders relaxed but back. Hold eye contact, but not in a confrontational way. Speak a little slower than you think you should. It shows control. Smile when appropriate, but don't overdo it. A calm, confident expression says more than overcompensation. Confidence isn't just a feeling, it's a skill. And like any skill, it can be trained, sharpened, and embodied. Machiavelli might have said, "Power flows not just from action, but from how the action is framed. And your posture is the frame. Let it speak strength, even when your inner voice hasn't caught up yet." Use silence as a sword. Let others reveal themselves. Silence isn't just the absence of speech. It's a tool, a strategy, and often a weapon more powerful than words. Machiavelli understood this deeply. In a world ruled by power games and manipulation, those who spoke the least often learned the most. This idea, using silence to draw out the true intentions, weaknesses, or desires of others, has stood the test of time for one reason: it works. Most people fear silence. In conversation, in negotiations, even in daily life, silence creates discomfort. It feels like a void that must be filled. And so, people speak. They ramble, they confess, they over-explain. In that vulnerability, they expose what they are thinking, what they are afraid of, what they want. Silence, then, becomes a mirror you hold up to others, allowing them to reveal what they would normally conceal. Machiavelli advised rulers to listen far more than they spoke. He warned that the loudest in the room were often the weakest, desperately signaling strength to cover insecurity. But the quiet ones, the ones who observed, could assess, calculate, and then act with precision. When you are silent, you are underestimated. You become unreadable, and that unreadability gives you a strategic edge. Consider a negotiation. The average person talks to justify their position or to convince the other party. But when you remain quiet after making a point, it creates pressure. The silence acts as a force. The other person feels compelled to fill it, often revealing their limits, their fears, or their real motivation. Machiavelli would have seen this as a subtle form of control, letting the opponent overplay their hand while you say little and lose nothing. The power of silence is even greater in conflict. When someone insults or challenges you, responding emotionally gives them control. But if you remain composed, silent, and still, it unsettles them. They expect a reaction. They want a counterattack. By not giving them one, you retain the power, and you force them to wrestle with their own insecurities. In leadership, silence also builds mystery. When you speak less, people listen more closely when you do speak. Your words carry weight, and others begin to watch for your reactions. You shift from being one voice among many to being the voice that matters. It's a psychological shift that reinforces authority without aggression. But here's the key. Silence isn't passivity. It's not withdrawal. It's active, strategic listening. You use it deliberately, watching how people behave when the spotlight isn't on you, but on them. This is how you learn who people really are, not who they pretend to be. So in your next meeting, your next disagreement, your next important conversation, try speaking a little less. Let others fill the air, and in doing so, let them reveal themselves fully. Anticipate betrayal. Never be shocked by it. One of Machiavelli's most sobering truths is that betrayal is not an if, but a when. People change. Loyalties shift. And the one who believes that others will remain forever loyal out of love or shared history is often the first to be blindsided. For Machiavelli, wisdom lies in expecting betrayal, not with paranoia, but with preparation. The brutal truth is that most betrayals come from those closest to us. Why? Because betrayal requires proximity. A stranger can harm you, but only a trusted friend, partner, or ally can truly betray you. And that's what makes it so painful and so dangerous. The emotional sting is sharp, but the strategic damage is often worse. That's why Machiavelli insisted, anticipate betrayal as a natural part of power dynamics. This doesn't mean you become cynical or unkind. Rather, you recognize the shifting nature of people's priorities. In The Prince, Machiavelli warned that individuals often act in self-interest, even if they genuinely like or respect you. Circumstances change. People get desperate, or they see an opportunity that serves them better. And when that moment comes, emotion will rarely override ambition. Anticipating betrayal means thinking 2 steps ahead. You don't just trust blindly. You verify. You test loyalty in small ways before entrusting someone with something major. You study body language, behavior, patterns. You stay emotionally detached enough to see warning signs, those subtle shifts in tone, hesitation in speech, or unexplained changes in behavior. Preparation also means building systems, not just relationships. If you lead a team, don't put all power in one person's hands. Distribute influence. If you run a business, never let one person control all access points. Machiavelli would say, create a structure that can survive treachery. That's not pessimism. That's resilience. And when betrayal happens, and it will at some point, you won't be crushed because you expected it. You're ready. You don't lash out emotionally because you've already rehearsed this in your mind. Instead, you respond with calm resolve. You cut ties, reposition, and carry on. One of Machiavelli's most famous observations is that it's better to be feared than loved, if you must choose. Not because fear is cruelty, but because love is fickle. It fades. But respect, the kind born from power, consistency, and preparedness, creates stability. When you accept betrayal as a part of the human equation, you become more powerful. You stop wasting time wondering why someone did what they did and start using your energy to adapt and overcome. You don't harden into bitterness, but you become sharper, wiser. In the end, betrayal loses its sting when it loses its surprise. And Machiavelli would urge you to remove surprise from the equation entirely. Your past does not define you. Your posture does. If there's one liberating lesson buried in Machiavelli's harsh realism, it's this: the past only holds power over you if you let it. In a world that loves to define people by their history, by their failures, their regrets, their age, Machiavelli offers a radical alternative. Power lies not in your past, but in how you present yourself now, in how you walk, how you speak, how you stand. Posture isn't just physical, it's psychological. It's the way you carry your authority in every room you enter. People judge you in seconds. They don't see your resume. They don't read your scars. They read your presence, and presence can be cultivated regardless of what came before. Machiavelli advised rulers to shape perception with care. Reputation, in his view, was not earned through mere honesty. It was crafted. That idea still holds. You can tell people who you are, but they believe what they see. If you carry yourself with confidence, poise, and self-command, the world will reflect that back to you. If you carry your past like a burden, apologizing for who you once were or what you didn't do, it will become a prison. So how do you reshape posture? You start with small physical cues. Stand tall even when you feel uncertain. Make eye contact, not to intimidate, but to engage. Speak slowly and with intention. These habits signal inner strength, and over time, they build that strength. You're not faking confidence. You're forging it, just as a ruler projects power before they've even consolidated it. Machiavelli would say, "You must appear strong before others believe you are." And once they believe, it becomes real. Your posture is also emotional. Are you the person who enters a conversation ready to listen, to contribute meaningfully, to assert boundaries with kindness? Or do you shrink into the background, waiting for permission to exist? The former earns respect. The latter fades into invisibility. Many people over 40 carry deep stories, careers that stalled, relationships that ended, dreams deferred. But Machiavelli wouldn't care about those stories unless they informed how you act today. He believed in realpolitik, the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. And in the real world, no one is keeping score of your history more than you. Rewriting your posture rewrites your future. You are not your mistakes. You are not your resume. You are not your lowest moment. You are what you choose to project deliberately and consistently. Machiavelli's wisdom can sound cold, but in this case, it's a gift. It means freedom. Your past may be written in stone, but your posture is fluid. And from this moment forward, you decide the shape it takes. Fortune favors the bold, but the prepared win. Machiavelli understood the seductive appeal of boldness. He admired the daring spirit of leaders who took risks, who moved first, who acted with conviction when others hesitated. Boldness, he argued, was essential in moments of crisis or opportunity. A bold leader could seize power, redirect the winds of fortune, and leave an indelible mark. But boldness alone wasn't enough. It had to be tethered to preparation, deep, unshakable preparation. Imagine a general charging into battle with fire in his chest, but no map, no supplies, and no plan. His courage might inspire for a moment, but his army would soon be crushed. Now contrast that with a commander who has studied the terrain, anticipated enemy movements, trained his soldiers meticulously, and then, at the right moment, strikes boldly. That is Machiavellian mastery. It's not the courage to act recklessly. It's the courage to act decisively because you're prepared. In The Prince, Machiavelli uses Cesare Borgia as a primary example. Borgia was ruthless, yes. He was bold, but he was also shrewd, calculating, and relentlessly prepared. He studied his enemies, timed his moves, and made alliances that served his ends, even if he later discarded them. He didn't wait for fortune to bless him. He created the conditions in which fortune had no choice but to favor him. Preparation, in the Machiavellian sense, isn't just about logistics. It's psychological. It's knowing how people behave under pressure. It's recognizing your own emotional triggers and learning to master them. It's rehearsing the confrontation, the speech, the negotiation so thoroughly that when the moment arrives, you move with precision. People think you're fearless, but in truth, you're focused. You're composed because you've already played the moment out in your mind 100 times, and that's where many people go wrong. They confuse boldness with spontaneity. They believe that confidence means showing up unarmed and hoping for the best. Machiavelli would call that foolishness. He knew that real power comes when courage is backed by strategy. He knew that while fortune may occasionally reward the impulsive, it consistently rewards those who are both daring and ready. So ask yourself, are you preparing in silence while others are speaking loudly? Are you studying the angles, the timing, the people involved? Are you planning for success in a way that fortune finds irresistible? If not, you're leaving too much to chance. And in a Machiavellian world, chance is a dangerous master. Act as if no one is coming to save you, because no one is. This idea might seem harsh at first glance, but it's one of the most liberating truths Machiavelli implies throughout his works. He believed that depending on others, whether it be political allies, popular opinion, or inherited privilege, was a fatal weakness. If you want to build real, lasting confidence and power, you must internalize the idea that you are your own savior. This doesn't mean never asking for help or denying the value of community. What it means is that your default mode must be one of self-reliance. You move as though no safety net exists. You plan as if failure will land squarely on your shoulders. You rise knowing that no one will hand you power. You will have to take it. Machiavelli criticized princes who inherited their power and believed it would shield them forever. In The Prince, he explains that those who rely on others to rise are often abandoned at their most vulnerable. He admired self-made leaders, those who fought tooth and nail for their position and who maintained it through vigilance, not entitlement. This is more than political advice. It's psychological. How many of us wait for external permission to act? We wait for the boss to notice our talent. We wait for a spouse to change. We wait for the world to become fairer, softer, more accommodating. But Machiavelli would urge you to stop waiting. If you act like someone is coming to save you, you'll hesitate. You'll compromise. You'll dilute your strength. But if you act as if no one is coming, that changes everything. Suddenly, you become the author of your life. You begin to plan more thoroughly, train more intensely, and execute more relentlessly. You stop playing the victim and start positioning yourself as the architect of your own fortune. When you live by this rule, your relationships also improve, not because you isolate yourself, but because you don't need others in order to function. You choose who to partner with based on shared values, not dependency. And people respect that. They sense when someone is grounded in self-leadership. It's magnetic. It's rare. So the next time you're tempted to hope that someone else will handle it, fix it, or rescue you, remember Machiavelli. Take the reins. Train your mind to default to action. Build your life in such a way that if everyone else falters, you still rise. That's not cynicism. That's power. Do not beg for loyalty. Command it. In Machiavelli's world, loyalty was never something to be begged for. It was something to be cultivated, demanded, and, when necessary, enforced. This doesn't mean ruling through fear alone, but it does mean understanding that loyalty is not an emotional gift. It's a strategic outcome. It's earned through strength, consistency, and clear consequences. The mistake most people make, whether in business, politics, or personal life, is assuming that loyalty comes from likability. They bend over backward to be agreeable, to be liked, to avoid confrontation. But Machiavelli would argue that this weakens your position, People do not stay loyal to those they pity or those who grovel. They stay loyal to those they respect, those they fear disappointing, and those who provide clear leadership. In The Prince, Machiavelli discusses whether it's better to be loved or feared. His answer? Ideally both, but if you must choose, be feared, not because cruelty is a virtue, but because fear is a more stable motivator than affection. People's emotions change, but a structure of power, backed by firm consequences and consistent leadership, endures. Translating this into everyday life. If you're leading a team, running a business, or even raising a family, don't chase approval. Set standards. Be decisive. Let your integrity and strength command the kind of loyalty that doesn't waver when the mood changes. If someone disrespects your boundaries repeatedly, don't plead. Enforce. If you're always giving and rarely receiving, stop trying to earn what should be mutually offered. This also means holding yourself to high standards. You can't expect loyalty from others if you are inconsistent, emotionally volatile, or unclear in your principles. Machiavelli valued discipline. He knew that leaders who carried themselves with gravity naturally drew followers who mirrored that seriousness. And finally, Machiavelli would say, test loyalty. Don't assume it. Observe people in times of pressure, success, or uncertainty. True loyalty shows up not when things are easy, but when power is tested. And once someone has proven loyal, not by words, but by actions, invest in them. Protect them. But always remember, loyalty is a currency of power. Don't devalue it by treating it like a favor. Commanding loyalty isn't about control. It's about clarity, confidence, and the quiet understanding that respect isn't given. It's earned. And once earned, it must be protected. Not through desperation, but through strength. Adapt faster than others even realize change is coming. In a world ruled by shifting alliances, unpredictable economies, and ever-evolving power structures, Machiavelli knew one truth above all. The ability to adapt is worth more than raw strength or inherited authority. But he pushed that concept one step further. Don't just adapt. Adapt faster than others even realize change is coming. Why? Because by the time most people recognize change, it's already shaped the battlefield. Most operate with a lag, emotionally, mentally, professionally. They wait for certainty. They resist the discomfort of uncertainty. They look back when the future is already rewriting itself. Machiavelli saw this hesitation as fatal. And in today's world, the stakes are no less high. Corporations collapse not because they lack resources, but because they cling to outdated models. Relationships fracture because people ignore the emotional undercurrents. Careers stall because professionals fail to retool, reskill, or reposition. Those who win in times of upheaval are not the biggest or the loudest. They are the ones who notice subtle shifts. The changing tone in a conversation, the emerging trend in a market, the growing tension in a team, and move first. They read the undercurrent and act with speed while others are still stuck in analysis or denial. To do this requires awareness and courage. You have to listen between the lines. You have to anticipate resistance and move anyway. You have to divorce your ego from your current role, current status, current version of success, because what served you yesterday may not serve you tomorrow. Adapting quickly doesn't mean being reactive. It means being proactively flexible. You change course not because you're forced, but because you're informed. You evolve not from fear, but from vision. This kind of adaptation gives you a powerful edge. You make strategic pivots before the herd. You claim opportunities before they become obvious. You reposition yourself while others are still clinging to what used to work. The beauty of this approach is that it compounds. Each successful shift builds your agility. Each bold decision, made early and wisely reinforces your confidence. Over time, you become the person others turn to, not because you always have the answers, but because you move when others freeze. The Machiavellian lesson here is simple. If you're not ahead of the curve, you're part of the landscape. Power doesn't come from controlling change. It comes from dancing with it. Surround yourself with competence, not comfort. If there's one repeated failure Machiavelli saw in rulers, it was this: surrounding themselves with people who made them feel good instead of people who made them better. He warned that when leaders crave comfort, they attract sycophants. When they crave excellence, they attract results. Surround yourself with competence, not comfort. This isn't just a leadership principle, it's a life philosophy. The people you allow into your inner circle shape your thinking, influence your standards, and ultimately determine your trajectory. If you fill your world with agreeable, unchallenging company, people who flatter, indulge, or never push back, you'll drift into mediocrity without even noticing. It feels safe. But it's a trap. Competent people, true, grounded, disciplined individuals, aren't always easy to be around. They challenge your ideas. They call out your blind spots. They hold up a mirror that reflects not just your strengths, but your weaknesses. That can feel uncomfortable, but it's necessary for growth. Machiavelli's vision of power wasn't built on ego, it was built on utility. He urged rulers to employ advisors and ministers who were intelligent, independent, and loyal to results, not flattery. In your own life, this applies directly. Who do you ask for advice? Who do you trust to speak hard truths? Who in your circle actually adds value? Comfortable people tell you what you want to hear. Competent people tell you what you need to hear. This is especially important as we grow older. It's easy to think, I've seen it all. I know who I am. But that mindset is what lets stagnation creep in. Competence keeps you sharp. It keeps you accountable. It keeps you humble without weakening your confidence. This also means being that person for others. Do you bring value or just validation? Are you challenging those around you in meaningful ways, or enabling their complacency? The company you keep is a reflection of the standards you hold. Machiavelli wasn't advocating coldness. He was advocating effectiveness. He understood that true loyalty comes from mutual respect, not empty praise, and that nothing destroys a leader faster than surrounding themselves with people who won't or can't tell the truth. So audit your circle. Replace comfort with competence. It might sting at first, but in time, you'll find yourself stronger, sharper, and more aligned with the path of real, lasting power. Make your moves before you speak your plans. This Machiavellian principle is both tactical and timeless. Make your moves before you speak your plans. Power in its purest form is felt, not announced, and those who talk too much about what they're going to do rarely end up doing it. Talking about plans feels good. It earns applause. It builds anticipation, but it's also a form of premature relief, a substitute for execution. And the more you speak, the more you reveal. You give away leverage. You invite scrutiny. You allow opponents to prepare. Machiavelli saw this dynamic play out constantly. Rulers who boasted of their military strategies or political ambitions often found themselves outmaneuvered by quieter, more calculated rivals. Because once your plan is public, it's no longer your own. It belongs to the opinions, reactions, and resistance of others. Instead, he advised discretion. Act first. Let the results speak. Let the shift become undeniable before anyone even knew there was movement. Because once you've done the thing, the critics no longer have power. They're too late. There's another reason this principle is so powerful. It protects your energy. Speaking about your plans too early can dilute your focus. You get caught in explaining, defending, refining, when you should be executing. Every word is a withdrawal from your reservoir of willpower. When you act before you speak, you keep your momentum to yourself. You build quietly, behind the curtain. You launch when the engine is already running. It's a shock to your rivals. It's a surprise to the doubters, and it reinforces the perception that you are always a few moves ahead. This isn't about secrecy for its own sake. It's about strategy. If you're writing a book, finish 3 chapters before you talk about it. If you're changing careers, lay the foundation before you announce it. If you're shifting alliances, make sure the new structure is solid before you burn the bridge. Machiavelli's core idea was that power is better used than promised. Actions are harder to attack. They're undeniable. You eliminate the gap between what you say and what you do, because by the time they hear about it, it's already done. So be silent. Be strategic. Let others discuss their dreams. You stay in motion. And when you speak, let it be a confirmation, not a preview. Kindness is power, when given from strength. In modern thinking, kindness is often associated with softness, with vulnerability, with passivity. But Machiavelli knew something deeper. He knew that kindness, when extended from strength, is one of the most disarming and powerful tools a leader or any human can wield. Kindness is power when given from strength. That's the distinction. Kindness from fear is appeasement. Kindness from weakness invites exploitation, but kindness from a position of confidence and control. That builds loyalty, respect, and influence that force alone cannot buy. Why? Because people don't expect it. When someone with power shows compassion, restraint, or understanding, it creates a profound psychological shift. It humanizes strength. It inspires allegiance. It softens resistance. This is why the most legendary leaders in history were not just feared, they were admired. Not because they were perfect, but because they balanced justice with mercy. But Machiavelli also warned, never be kind to be liked. That opens the door to manipulation. Your kindness must be deliberate, purposeful, strategic. You show grace when it reinforces your vision, not when it weakens your hand. This applies in every arena. In business, the leader who empowers their team from a place of mastery builds far more loyalty than one who micromanages. In family, a parent who disciplines with clarity but forgives with intention raises resilient, respected children. In negotiation, the person who could crush the opponent but chooses fairness instead gains trust. The key is to earn the right to be kind. You do that through self-mastery, through control over your emotions, through a reputation for strength. Once that foundation is solid, kindness becomes a tool, not a liability. In this way, Machiavelli's version of kindness isn't weakness, it's calculated mercy. And that makes it rare, powerful, memorable. So extend kindness, but never from desperation. Do it from choice. That's when it becomes power. That's when people remember it. That's when it builds something stronger than fear, enduring respect. Charm opens doors. Strategy keeps them open. Charm is a force. It can disarm hostility, earn trust quickly, and make people want to follow you, even before they understand your goals. Machiavelli, while often remembered for his ruthlessness, understood charm as a political weapon. He knew that the initial impression you make often determines whether you even get a seat at the table. But what many forget is that charm is only the beginning. Without strategy, charm is a spark without firewood. It dazzles, then fades. This duality is crucial. Charm gets you in the room. Strategy decides whether you stay. People over 40 often know what it feels like to get in the door, through charisma, reputation, or relationships, only to realize that staying relevant, respected, or in control requires more than likability. It requires calculated moves, patience, and foresight. Machiavelli admired leaders who could be both agreeable and shrewd. The ideal prince was someone who could inspire trust, offer warmth when needed, but never let emotion replace reason. He wrote that it's better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both, but ideally you are both. Charm draws people in. Strategy ensures they don't become a threat later. Think of charm as your invitation. You make someone feel seen, heard, respected. You enter their good graces, but strategy is your long game. It's what ensures that when those people later question your role, your presence, or your authority, you've already planted the seeds that make them support you or fear losing you. In business, this could mean networking with charisma, but solidifying your place through follow-through, competence, and anticipation of change. In personal life, it could mean using warmth to build relationships, but setting boundaries to protect your energy and time. Without strategy, charm becomes exhausting. You're constantly performing without results. Machiavelli would say, never confuse charm with safety. Those who rely solely on personality are often blindsided when situations shift. Charisma might get you applause, but only strategy wins wars. The most effective leaders build rapport and relationships, yes, but they also read people, predict outcomes, and move 3 steps ahead. So as you engage others, ask, am I relying only on being liked? Or am I also preparing for what happens after I'm accepted? Because people's loyalty shifts, situations evolve, and the same people who smile at you now may compete with you later. Charm is a wonderful tool, but only when paired with strategy does it become a true weapon. Confidence is cultivated in solitude, tested in conflict. Confidence is not inherited. It is not given to us by applause, success, or approval. Real confidence is forged in the quiet hours, when no one is watching and there's no applause to collect. Machiavelli may not have spoken directly about confidence as we use the word today, but his teachings on leadership and power point to this fundamental truth. The strongest leaders prepare alone. They sharpen their minds in solitude, so that when challenge strikes, they are unshaken. Solitude is the furnace of self-knowledge. It is where you build your understanding of who you are and what you stand for. In the noise of everyday life, it's easy to let others dictate your value or direction. But when you spend time alone, thinking, reading, preparing, you begin to separate external noise from internal truth. And this is the core of confidence, knowing yourself so deeply that external forces no longer rattle your foundation. In your 40s, 50s, and beyond, solitude becomes not a burden, but a resource. The confidence you show in meetings, negotiations, or relationships is rarely built in those moments. It's built in the silent hours before them. Just as a warrior doesn't gain courage in the battlefield, but in training, your confidence grows when you test your beliefs, analyze your fears, and prepare yourself mentally and emotionally for what's to come. And then, when conflict arises, that's when your confidence is revealed. Not created. Revealed. A crisis, a betrayal, a confrontation. These are not just threats, they are mirrors. They show you who you really are and what you truly believe. Machiavelli viewed conflict not as something to avoid, but as a necessary test of one's leadership. Only in pressure do we see whether our preparation was real or just performance. Consider the leaders you respect most. They are not the loudest or flashiest. They are the ones who seem calm in chaos. They speak less but say more. That poise does not come from ego. It comes from earned inner clarity. To live this philosophy is to embrace solitude as essential, not something to escape. It's to treat conflict not as a failure, but as a proving ground. You cannot fake confidence in high-stakes moments. You can only summon what you've built in private. So spend time with your own thoughts. Study your own weaknesses. Know your patterns. Prepare for confrontation not with bravado, but with the quiet, unshakable strength of someone who has already faced themselves. That is what Machiavelli respected. Confidence not as arrogance, but as readiness. Let your rivals think they understand you. Then surprise them. Deception, to Machiavelli, was not immoral, it was practical. In his world, being predictable meant being vulnerable. A rival who knows your next move is a rival who can counter it. That's why one of the oldest and most effective strategies is this. Allow others to believe they've figured you out. Encourage the illusion. Feed their certainty. Then move in a direction they never saw coming. This isn't manipulation for its own sake. It's a power tactic. Letting people form assumptions about you creates space for surprise, and surprise is a powerful weapon. Machiavelli's writings constantly emphasize that a ruler must be like both the lion and the fox. The lion brings force, the fox brings cunning. And one of the fox's most potent tools is unpredictability. When your enemies, or even colleagues, think they have you figured out, they stop being vigilant. They become overconfident. They underestimate you. That's when your power increases. Whether it's in negotiations, politics, or personal competition, surprise shifts the dynamic instantly. You take back control not by brute force, but by breaking their mental map. This strategy requires patience. You must allow others to form conclusions. You might need to downplay your strength or let them think your goals are simpler than they are. But when the moment comes to strike, you do so decisively, turning their assumptions into liabilities. Consider how often history's most successful leaders were underestimated. Lincoln was thought too humble to lead. Churchill, too belligerent to win trust. Yet when the time came, they moved with a force and vision that caught their rivals off guard. That surprise was not accidental. It was designed. You don't need to live a double life to apply this philosophy. Simply be intentional about what you reveal. Let others see a simplified version of your plans. Hold your cards close. Say less than you know. Don't feel compelled to defend or explain yourself fully. Let them relax. Let them think they understand. Then act in a way that redefines the entire game. Machiavelli believed that power is best wielded when it's controlled. Surprise gives you that control. And it also sends a message. You are not to be underestimated. That message sticks. Once you've shocked someone with your capability, they never quite relax around you again. And that tension is your silent leverage. Don't argue. Win with results, not words. Machiavelli had little patience for empty talk. He believed the battlefield of ideas was often a distraction from the battlefield of outcomes. Words are cheap, he said, and the more you explain, the more you expose. Power is not argued into existence. It is asserted through achievement. This principle is timeless. In business, politics, or personal disputes, don't explain. Win. In every conflict, there's a temptation to justify yourself, to argue your point, to prove your intellect, your position, your intent. But Machiavelli saw this as a trap. Arguments create noise. Results create silence. And silence, when earned through impact, speaks louder than any rebuttal. People may not agree with your words, but they can't ignore your results. If your project succeeds, your critics vanish. If your plan works, the doubters quiet themselves. Your success is the argument no one can beat. And when you focus on producing results rather than defending your ideas, you save energy, time, and political capital. Machiavelli warned that arguments often expose your hand. They show people what matters to you. They invite pushback and give others power. In contrast, action takes people off guard. It bypasses debate entirely. Imagine telling someone your plan versus doing it. One invites debate, the other invites results. This philosophy also helps preserve relationships. Arguments can burn bridges. They escalate emotions, especially when egos are involved. But when you choose to demonstrate rather than debate, you rise above the fray. You don't need to prove someone wrong. You simply prove yourself right through execution. Apply this in meetings. Let your results speak. In conflicts, step back from the emotional tug of argument. In family situations, don't lecture. Live your truth and let your life be the evidence. This doesn't mean avoiding hard conversations, but it does mean being selective. Reserve your words for where they can actually move things forward. Otherwise, let results speak the final word. Machiavelli might put it this way: win the war, not the debate. Because in the end, people don't follow the loudest voice. They follow the most effective leader. Results aren't just persuasive, they are irrefutable. Be underestimated until it's too late for them. There's a unique power in being underestimated. It may sting at first, being overlooked, dismissed, or ignored, but Machiavelli would argue that this is not a weakness. In fact, it's a weapon. To be underestimated is to be given the gift of invisibility until it no longer serves you. In The Prince, Machiavelli frequently alludes to the dangers of being too obvious, too strong, or too proud too early. When people perceive you as a threat, they begin to act against you. They build defenses, they plot. But when they believe you are harmless, or worse, incompetent, they drop their guard. And that's when the shift begins. To the mature mind, especially those between 40 and 60 who have seen their fair share of office politics, family power dynamics, and social games, this strategy resonates deeply. There is a wisdom in knowing when to let others believe they're ahead, a quiet discipline in letting someone else think they've outsmarted you, when in reality they've simply walked into your design. Machiavelli taught that power is more sustainable when it's acquired subtly and revealed strategically. Let others show their cards while you gather information, build resources, and strengthen your position. Then, when you choose to move, the blow is not only effective, it's unexpected. Surprise magnifies impact. This strategy also protects you. When you are underestimated, you're not the target. No one suspects the quiet one. No one sees the long-term strategist hiding behind small talk and nods. You operate beneath the noise, untouched by ego battles and unnecessary attention. It gives you time and space, two of the rarest currencies in any competitive setting. But here's the caveat: being underestimated only works if you are truly preparing in silence. You can't just accept the lower estimation. You must be sharpening your edge behind the curtain, building competence, strengthening alliances, identifying vulnerabilities. It's not laziness. It's tactical patience. This approach also offers a kind of emotional freedom. You're no longer performing to be seen or praised. You're not exhausting yourself, proving your worth. Instead, you're conserving energy for the moments that actually matter. The fewer people expect from you, the more freedom you have to exceed every expectation when it counts. So allow them their assumptions. Let them smirk. Let them doubt. Let them feel superior. Because when your time comes, and it will come, the weight of their miscalculation will work in your favor. That's not just strategy. That's poetic justice. Control how others feel about you by controlling how you carry yourself. Perception is power. This idea is woven through every line of Machiavelli's work. He knew that people rarely see the truth of a person. They see the image presented to them. And the way you carry yourself, the way you enter a room, speak, move, and react, becomes the lens through which others form opinions. That lens, once set, becomes incredibly difficult to change. If you want people to feel respect, fear, admiration, or trust toward you, you must first evoke those things in how you show up. It starts with posture, tone, presence. Machiavelli would say, "Control the theater of power, not for vanity, but for survival." Let's be clear, this isn't about faking who you are. It's about presenting the version of you that best aligns with your goals. Think of how military generals wear uniforms or how judges wear robes. These aren't random traditions. They're visual tools that command respect. In your everyday life, the equivalent might be the way you speak under pressure, how calmly you handle conflict, or how you hold eye contact during a negotiation. When you carry yourself with dignity, with precision, you shift how people feel around you. You reduce room for doubt. You eliminate the invitation for disrespect. Even small details matter. Walking with intent, speaking with pauses instead of filler words, being comfortable with silence. These behaviors signal control, and control is magnetic. But it's not just about looking strong, it's about looking consistent. People trust what they can predict. When your demeanor is balanced, composed, and deliberate, others feel safe, even if they don't consciously know why. And once you create a consistent emotional experience for others, you become influential without needing to persuade. Machiavelli also believed that a ruler, or anyone in power, must sometimes appear more virtuous than they are. Not because lying is noble, but because image holds political currency. Carrying yourself as calm when you're nervous, confident when you're unsure, or generous when you feel guarded doesn't mean you're being fake. It means you're choosing the story others will tell about you. This is especially crucial in a world where people are constantly judged before they're understood. And for those in midlife, this principle becomes even more important. You've earned your wisdom, but how you carry it determines whether others see it. The quieter you speak, the more people must lean in. The more intentional you are, the less others can take you lightly. So carry yourself not just with confidence, but with craftsmanship. You are always communicating, even when you say nothing. Control that message, and you control the way others feel in your presence and about your presence. Seek respect, not approval. One lasts. Approval feels good, but respect builds you. Machiavelli understood that the pursuit of approval can be a fatal flaw in leadership. Leaders who seek to be liked will often compromise their authority, their vision, and even their values. Respect, on the other hand, can endure long after the applause fades. In his view, a ruler must not fear being disliked if it serves a higher purpose. The same is true for all of us navigating power dynamics, whether in work, family, or society. Seeking approval is a form of dependency. It ties your sense of worth to the reactions of others. It demands constant performance, constant adaptation, constant sacrifice of self. Respect, though, is rooted in strength. It grows when people see consistency between your words and actions. It deepens when you take stands that are unpopular but principled. You might not get praise in the moment, but you build something more durable, a reputation. This distinction is vital, especially for those in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. People who've likely lived through seasons of pleasing others, trying to fit expectations, softening edges to maintain peace. At some point, you realize that approval is fickle. It shifts with moods, with trends, with gossip. Respect, however, comes from the substance of who you are and how you've lived. Machiavelli would argue that leaders must be willing to make hard decisions without concern for being liked, because people don't always like what's best for them. A strong leader governs with foresight, not popularity. And in personal life, the same rule applies. The friend, parent, or mentor who tells the hard truth is rarely the favorite in the moment, but they are the one remembered with gratitude years later. There is a liberation in choosing respect over approval. You stop chasing. You stop diluting. You begin speaking from a place of conviction, not anxiety. And ironically, this very act of self-respect tends to draw the right kind of admiration, not flattery, but genuine regard. And remember, respect is earned not just by boldness, but by how you treat others. Fairness, competence, boundaries. When you model those traits, people may not agree with you, but they will trust you. That trust becomes influence. That influence becomes legacy. So if you must choose, choose respect. Approval dies when you say no. Respect is born when you do. Conceal your flaws behind undeniable competence. Every person has flaws, insecurities, habits, weaknesses. Machiavelli would never suggest perfection. He would, however, advise that flaws should never be the first thing people see. Instead, he would tell you, lead with strength so solid, so refined, that your flaws become irrelevant. Undeniable competence is a shield. When you execute with excellence, people are less interested in your imperfections. Why? Because value trumps vulnerability, at least at first. A highly skilled leader, artist, or strategist can carry subtle flaws without consequence, because their performance drowns out the noise. This is not about hiding who you are, it's about establishing credibility before inviting scrutiny. When people see you as effective, they give you more grace. They forgive mistakes, they overlook quirks, they trust your intentions. But when flaws are front and center, when you lead with doubt, over-explain, or focus too much on what you lack, confidence erodes before it begins. Competence isn't just technical skill. It's your ability to deliver results. It's how well you communicate, make decisions, hold pressure, solve problems. Every moment you refine these things, you add layers of armor. And that armor doesn't just protect you, it earns you loyalty and leverage. Machiavelli was clear. A leader must appear capable, even in moments of uncertainty. Because perception creates stability, and people follow those who appear steady, not those who ask to be rescued. In practical terms, this means showing up prepared, speaking with precision, and following through on commitments. For those in midlife, this philosophy takes on new meaning. You may feel the weight of past failures, missed chances, or lingering self-doubt. But here's the truth. None of those matter if you lead with mastery now. Every day is a new opportunity to reinforce your identity through action. And the more you do so, the less anyone, including you, will focus on what's wrong. This doesn't mean pretending. It means focusing energy where it creates trust. Your competence can become so compelling that it defines you more than your wounds do. So build it, sharpen it, let your excellence walk into the room first. Because when you do, your flaws don't disappear. They simply lose their power. When you doubt, act anyway. Courage grows from motion. Machiavelli would have understood something that modern psychology confirms. Hesitation breeds fear, but action builds confidence. When you doubt, the worst thing you can do is freeze, because inaction reinforces fear, and fear, left unchecked, becomes a habit. Machiavelli's world was filled with shifting alliances, political betrayals, and uncertain outcomes. Leaders didn't always have the luxury of clarity. Often, they had to make decisions with incomplete information, under pressure, with lives and power hanging in the balance. What did he advise in these moments? Act decisively. Don't wait for perfect certainty. Courage grows from motion. Why is this so important? Because doubt is natural. Everyone feels it. But not everyone responds to it the same way. Some people wait for the fear to go away before acting. Others understand that action itself is what transforms the fear. You don't wait to become confident before stepping forward. You step forward to become confident. This principle applies in every area of life. In business, waiting too long to make a move can cost you an opportunity. In relationships, not speaking up because of fear might allow resentment to grow. In personal development, doubting your ability to succeed might keep you stuck in patterns that no longer serve you. The breakthrough? Move, even if you're unsure, especially if you're unsure. Machiavelli knew that the most powerful leaders weren't the ones who always had the right answers. They were the ones who were willing to choose, to risk, and to adapt. They trusted their ability to adjust more than they trusted their ability to predict. Let's make this real. Think of a time when you doubted yourself, but acted anyway. What happened? Maybe it wasn't perfect, but chances are it moved things forward. You learned, you adjusted, and more often than not, you grew. That's the pattern. The truth is, your brain responds to movement. Action creates momentum. It gives your nervous system something to do. It interrupts the spiral of doubt and starts creating evidence that you're capable. And even if the first steps are awkward or imperfect, they break the paralysis. In your 40s, 50s, or 60s, this becomes even more important. Why? Because self-doubt has had decades to settle in. You may have voices in your head from your past, parents, teachers, former bosses, telling you to play it safe. But Machiavelli would urge you to flip that. When in doubt, don't retreat, advance. This doesn't mean acting recklessly. It means taking calculated steps even in uncertainty. It means trusting that movement creates clarity. The fog of doubt doesn't lift before you move. It lifts as you move. So next time fear whispers, "What if you fail?" Respond with action. Send the message, make the call, say what you believe, start the project. Each step weakens doubt's grip, and over time, your courage will stop being something you try to summon and become something you carry. Never explain more than is necessary. Machiavelli's Italy was a place where words could be weapons and liabilities. A poorly timed explanation could expose weakness, invite manipulation, or give an enemy the upper hand. That's why one of the most enduring confidence techniques, still relevant today, is this: never explain more than is necessary. Over-explaining is often a mask for insecurity. When we feel unsure of ourselves, we start justifying our decisions, opinions, or boundaries. We think if we say more, people will understand us better or agree with us. But the opposite usually happens. The more we say, the more power we give away. Machiavelli understood this instinctively. He believed a leader should always appear composed, deliberate, and in control. Long-winded explanations chip away at that image. They invite questions. They suggest guilt or doubt. They open the door for others to probe, challenge, or manipulate. Think of how powerful it is when someone simply says, "This is the decision," and stops talking. It sends a message of clarity and confidence. Compare that to someone who keeps explaining, backtracking, softening their position. It doesn't matter if their logic is sound. What we feel is their insecurity. This principle applies far beyond politics. In a business setting, for instance, concise communication signals authority. A manager who outlines a plan simply and directly is trusted more than one who rambles. In relationships, setting a boundary without over-explaining shows emotional maturity. "I can't make it that day" is stronger than "I really want to come, but I'm just so overwhelmed and I feel bad." The key here is restraint. Give people enough to understand your intent, but no more. Leave space. Let your silence carry weight. Machiavelli knew that words lose power when they're overused. Silence, well-timed and deliberate, commands attention. Psychologically, this also creates mystery. When you don't explain everything, people lean in. They wonder what you're thinking. They fill in the blanks. And often, they'll assume more strength and depth than if you had spelled everything out. There's also a practical layer. The more you talk, the more likely you are to say something you'll regret. In negotiations, this can cost you leverage. In conflict, it can escalate a problem. In leadership, it can confuse your team. So, how do you apply this? Pause before you speak. Think. What is the simplest version of what I need to say? Resist the urge to soften your message too much. You don't need to apologize for having a position. Don't rush to fill silence. Let others sit with what you've said. Practice saying less. It takes discipline, but it builds presence. Machiavelli's world rewarded precision. Ours does too. In an age of endless chatter and oversharing, the one who speaks with purpose, then stops, is the one who stands out. Leave people guessing. Predictability is weakness. Machiavelli's political strategy revolved around control, not just of actions, but of information. He believed that unpredictability was a source of power. If others know what you're going to do, they can plan around you. But if they're unsure, if they're guessing, you hold the upper hand. This is why predictability is weakness. Think about a chess game. If your opponent knows every move you'll make, they'll beat you every time. The same principle applies in life. When you're too predictable, when your habits, reactions, and decisions are easy to anticipate, you give others control. They know how to push your buttons, how to exploit your timing, how to work around your strengths. Machiavelli advised leaders to be calculated but flexible. Surprise your enemies. Keep your allies attentive. Let no one feel they fully understand you. That mystery creates respect, caution, and curiosity. In everyday life, this has real implications. For example, in leadership, when employees always know exactly how you'll respond, they may stop bringing their best thinking. They'll game your system. But if you occasionally switch gears, make an unexpected decision, show a new side, they stay sharp. They listen more closely. In relationships, predictability can lead to being taken for granted. If your reactions are always the same, people may stop listening. But change the rhythm, respond differently, act when they least expect it, and you command attention again. This isn't about being erratic or dishonest. Machiavelli wasn't encouraging chaos. He was encouraging strategic variability. Like a good poker player, you don't show all your cards. You vary your play, not randomly, but with purpose. Here's how to use this in your own life. Don't share everything. Keep certain opinions, goals, or strategies private. Let people wonder. Shift your routines slightly. Be flexible enough that no one can fully predict your schedule or patterns. Respond in unexpected ways. When someone expects anger, respond with calm. When they expect silence, speak up. This builds intrigue. Change your tone occasionally. A usually light-hearted person showing seriousness suddenly, or vice versa, can shift dynamics in your favor. People crave certainty, but they respect mystery. When you leave people guessing, you control the pace. You become more compelling, more difficult to manipulate, and more powerful. Machiavelli would say, keep your intentions hidden until they become outcomes. Let others guess at your next move, but never let them see your hand. That is the path of strategic influence. Don't match energy. Command the tone. It's a natural instinct to mirror the energy of the people around us. If someone is angry, we get defensive. If someone is anxious, we feel unsettled. If someone is loud, we raise our voice to meet theirs. But Machiavellian wisdom reminds us, never match energy. Instead, command the tone. This is a critical distinction between those who react and those who lead. Matching energy puts you in a position of emotional submission. It means the other person sets the stage, and you play along. But commanding the tone means you set the emotional baseline, and others follow you. Let's say you're in a tense meeting. Someone comes in hot, raising their voice, blaming, escalating. The average response? Match their intensity. Push back just as hard. But what does that do? It accelerates the chaos. Now it's ego against ego, and no one is thinking clearly. Now picture the Machiavellian way. You stay calm, measured, unshaken. You lower your voice slightly instead of raising it. You slow your speech instead of speeding it up. The contrast is powerful. It disrupts the other person's rhythm. They suddenly look and feel like the one out of control. That alone can shift the entire dynamic in your favor. Why does this work? Because tone is contagious, but so is composure. When you keep your emotional center, you become the gravitational pull in the room. Others begin to calibrate to you, and that's how influence begins. It doesn't mean you ignore emotion or pretend you're above it. It means you are intentional about when and how you express it. This is emotional leadership. It's what allows a seasoned executive to de-escalate a boardroom. It's what makes a confident parent settle a household. It's what gives a negotiator the upper hand. Matching energy also carries another risk. It reveals your triggers. If people know they can provoke you, they can manipulate you. But if your tone stays consistent, confident, clear, firm, they lose their leverage. They're playing a game without rules they understand. This is especially important in personal relationships. Someone might come to you with panic, jealousy, resentment. If you match that, it spirals. But if you bring calm, you give them something to hold on to, something solid. That's real leadership, even in the quiet moments. Commanding tone also helps in asserting boundaries, giving feedback, or making requests. When your voice is calm and steady, you sound like someone who doesn't need to prove anything. That quiet confidence is magnetic. So the next time someone tries to control the emotional tempo, pause. Don't rise to their pitch. Slow it down. Level it out. Let them feel the shift, because the person who commands the tone is the one truly in control. Create boundaries and enforce them without apology. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors with locks that you control. And Machiavelli would insist that true power begins the moment you stop explaining those locks to people who never had the right to walk through them in the first place. In his writings, Machiavelli often warned that rulers who failed to enforce their authority invited chaos. He saw clearly that kindness without limits leads not to loyalty, but to exploitation. The same applies in personal and professional life. A boundary is only as strong as your willingness to defend it. Most people don't have a problem setting boundaries. They know what they want. They know what hurts them, what depletes them, what violates their sense of safety or dignity. The real problem is enforcement. The moment someone pushes against the boundary, many fold out of guilt, fear of conflict, or the need to be liked. But if you constantly allow your boundaries to be negotiated, they are no longer boundaries. They're suggestions, and suggestions are easy to ignore. Machiavelli would say, "A prince who cannot enforce his laws is not a prince at all." Likewise, if you cannot enforce your personal boundaries, people will stop taking you seriously. Not because they're cruel, but because you've trained them not to. Let's say you've told a friend you don't answer work calls after 8 p.m. If they call anyway, and you answer, you've just erased your line. If a colleague constantly interrupts you in meetings and you say nothing, you've signaled permission. Here's the solution. Enforce without apology. You don't owe explanations. You don't need long justifications. A boundary is not a courtroom case. It's a statement. I'm not available after 8. I need this time for myself. I'm not comfortable with that. The tone is respectful but final. And most importantly, it's consistent. People test limits. That's human nature. But when you respond consistently, they stop testing. You teach people how to treat you, not with words, but with consequences. This is especially crucial for those in midlife who may be redefining their priorities. Maybe you've spent decades being available to everyone, family, coworkers, even strangers. But now you want space for yourself, peace, autonomy. That shift is powerful, but it requires new boundaries. And yes, people may resist. Some may accuse you of being distant, cold, or selfish. That's not a reflection of your boundary, it's a reflection of how much they benefited from your lack of one. Don't let their discomfort shrink your standards. Power isn't in being untouchable, it's in being clear. It's in saying, this is where I end and you begin. Respect that, or step back. Machiavelli would admire that, not because it's aggressive, but because it preserves sovereignty. And sovereignty, whether in politics or personal life, is the essence of control. Know when to walk away and when to conquer. One of the most difficult decisions in life, both personally and professionally, is knowing when to let go and when to double down. Machiavelli, with his unsentimental view of human nature, offers a vital distinction. Walk away from what weakens you. Conquer what's worth the fight. The error most people make is treating everything like it deserves endless effort. But not all battles are worth it. Some relationships, careers, partnerships, or goals only drain you. They survive not on value, but on your fear of quitting. Machiavelli believed that power is finite, and wasting it on fruitless pursuits is the surest way to lose control. In The Prince, he advised rulers to cut losses decisively. If a province rebels repeatedly, don't keep throwing troops at it. Make peace or burn the bridge. But don't bleed out in the middle. This is cold advice, but it's also freeing. Because sometimes walking away isn't failure. It's a strategic retreat that saves your energy for the fight that matters. Let's take relationships. You might invest years trying to fix something with someone who consistently disrespects your boundaries, dismisses your needs, or manipulates your goodwill. You keep hoping they'll change. But they don't. Machiavelli would say, this is a loyalty to hope, not reality. And loyalty to illusion is weakness. On the flip side, there are moments when you must conquer. That doesn't mean domination. It means commitment. It means you see the value of the fight and you go all in. Maybe it's a new business idea, a career shift in your 50s, or a personal transformation. Fear will whisper, it's too late. But your instincts may say otherwise. That's when you conquer, not recklessly, but with clarity. To do this well, you must master discernment. Ask, is this challenge building me or breaking me? Am I investing from hope or from evidence? If I walk away now, will I feel lighter or will I regret it? Conquering requires discipline, consistency, and sometimes ruthlessness, not toward others, but toward your own excuses. Walking away requires courage, the courage to admit it's not working and that your energy is better spent elsewhere. Both are acts of strength. Both are decisions of sovereignty. And both are deeply Machiavellian, not in the manipulative sense, but in the strategic sense. Don't waste your fire on ashes. Walk away from the ruins. But when you see something worth building, burn the bridges behind you and move forward with total conviction. Confidence is a decision, rehearsed daily. Confidence isn't a feeling. It's not a personality trait. It's not something you're born with or without. Machiavelli would argue it's much more practical than that. Confidence is a decision, a daily act of rehearsal. Most people misunderstand confidence. They think it's the outcome of success, but the truth is, it's the cause. Confident people don't act boldly because they're sure it'll work. They act boldly, and that creates momentum. Think of confidence like armor. You put it on before battle, not after you've won. And like armor, it must be maintained, polished, adjusted. It's a ritual. Machiavelli knew the power of rehearsal. He advised rulers to appear strong even when uncertain. That appearance alone discouraged rebellion. But over time, that appearance became reality. You act confident long enough, and you begin to believe it yourself. This doesn't mean pretending. It means conditioning. Like an athlete training muscle memory, confidence is something you practice. You speak up even when your voice shakes. You make the call even when you fear rejection. You hold your posture even when your thoughts are racing. The modern world rewards this kind of confidence. In leadership, no one wants to follow someone who is still figuring it out. In relationships, confidence builds attraction and trust. Even in solitude, confidence affects how you talk to yourself, whether your inner voice is one of doubt or direction. To rehearse confidence, build small rituals. Speak one sentence with conviction each day. Say no to something that drains you. Make one bold decision, no matter how small. Over time, these choices compound. Confidence grows like compound interest. It rewards consistency more than natural talent. When you fail, rehearse again. When you get embarrassed, rehearse again. When you feel like shrinking, rehearse again. That's what makes it confidence, not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let fear write the script. Machiavelli might say, "You do not wait to feel powerful. You act powerful until it becomes your state." And in a world that often tries to reduce people to their fears, that decision to stand tall, even shakily, is a radical act. So rehearse, daily, in thought, in action, in speech. Confidence is not an inheritance. It is a commitment, one you renew every time you refuse to bow to your own hesitation. Your silence should make people uncomfortable in the right way. Machiavelli lived in a time when words were currency, but silence, when wielded with intention, was often more powerful. He understood that those who always speak, always explain, and always justify are easier to read, easier to predict, and therefore easier to manipulate. True influence, he would suggest, lies in the ability to use silence as a tool, strategic, disarming, and even unsettling. Silence in the Machiavellian sense isn't passive. It's not about retreating or withholding out of fear. It's about control. When you choose not to fill the room with your voice, you create space for others to reveal themselves. People rush to fill silence with their assumptions, their insecurities, their need for reassurance. That's when the mask slips. That's when the truth reveals itself. In politics, courts, and councils, Machiavelli would have seen this tactic often. The most dangerous person in the room is rarely the loudest. It's the one who listens more than they speak, who absorbs the information, reads the power dynamics, and only speaks when it matters. Their silence becomes a form of pressure, causing others to second-guess, over-explain, or expose weaknesses. Now imagine applying this to modern life. In negotiations, silence can force the other party to reveal their true bottom line. In conflict, a composed pause can disarm aggression faster than shouting ever could. In leadership, restraint in speech commands attention. When you finally do speak, every word lands with weight. But this doesn't mean silence is always golden. It must be wielded with precision. Use it too much and you may appear indifferent or weak. Use it too little and you lose its power. The key is intentionality. Know why you're holding back. Know what effect you're aiming to create. Silence also works on a personal level. When people are used to you always being available, always explaining yourself, always softening the blow, they take your voice for granted. But when you withhold commentary, when you don't explain every decision or justify every emotion, it shifts the dynamic. You become less reactive, more sovereign. Your presence begins to carry tension, the kind that demands respect. Think about moments when you were silent, not out of fear, but out of strength. Those moments likely made an impact. Maybe someone leaned in, sensing your disapproval. Maybe a team member stepped up, unsure of your reaction. Maybe someone reconsidered their actions, feeling the weight of your absence. Machiavelli would remind you, power does not always come from domination. Sometimes it comes from restraint. And when your silence carries meaning, people feel it, not as neglect, but as force. So let your silence speak volumes. Let it unsettle the right people and elevate the way your voice is heard. Learn the rules, then bend them. Machiavelli didn't admire rebels for the sake of rebellion. He didn't champion chaos. What he did admire were those who understood the system inside and out, and then used that knowledge to manipulate, reform, or circumvent it for their own advancement. In his world, the first mistake of the naive was breaking rules they didn't understand. The clever strategist, by contrast, studied the rules meticulously, not to follow them, but to exploit them. This philosophy applies across every domain: politics, business, law, social dynamics. The person who blindly follows rules out of fear or habit is at the mercy of those who understand them more deeply. Conversely, the person who recklessly breaks rules without understanding them often fails and pays dearly for it. The Machiavellian leader does neither. They learn the game, inside and out. Then they alter its course. Think of the political figures Machiavelli studied. Many rose to power not by overthrowing systems, but by mastering them. They understood the loopholes, the soft spots, the written and unwritten codes. They knew how to leverage appearances of virtue, how to navigate bureaucracy, and how to appear lawful while quietly steering outcomes to their advantage. Applied to modern life, this is the difference between playing by the book and understanding the book. A business leader might navigate regulatory frameworks not to avoid taxes, but to optimize every legal advantage. A skilled negotiator might follow the protocol during a deal, but subtly shape terms that favor them long-term. A confident individual might respect social norms in public while asserting unconventional choices in private. The key is this: rules are tools, not chains. But to use a tool, you must first know how it works. That means learning the expectations, the patterns, the precedents. Once you understand those, you can push boundaries intelligently without appearing reckless. Machiavelli knew that subtlety was often more powerful than open rebellion. Changing the game without announcing you're doing so, that's real mastery. This mindset also builds confidence. When you know the rules deeply, you're not intimidated by them. You know what's flexible and what's rigid. You recognize when to conform and when to challenge. You stop being a passive player and start becoming a quiet architect. So if you find yourself frustrated by limits, at work, in relationships, in life, ask yourself, do you really understand the system you're in, or are you rebelling out of emotion? Study it. Learn it, then bend it. With elegance, with calculation, and with a smirk, Machiavelli would have appreciated. Trust is currency. Spend it wisely. To Machiavelli, trust was never assumed. It was a volatile commodity, earned carefully and lost easily. He knew that while power and fear could enforce order, trust was the invisible currency that allowed influence to last. But like any currency, it could be spent, hoarded, or squandered. and those who gave it away too freely were often the first to be betrayed. Trust is often romanticized today. We're taught to default to trust, to see it as a virtue. Machiavelli would challenge that. He'd argue that while being trustworthy is powerful, giving trust too easily is weakness. The wise leader, in his view, watches closely, tests loyalties, offers trust incrementally. Because betrayal is not a question of if, but when and by whom. This doesn't mean paranoia. It means strategy. In The Prince, Machiavelli warned of the dangers of trusting mercenaries, soldiers who fought for pay, not loyalty. They were unreliable because their allegiance was transactional. But the principle applies far beyond the battlefield. People show you where their loyalty lies by their behavior under pressure. That's when trust should be weighed. In personal relationships, this looks like watching consistency over charm. In business, it's about track records, not promises. In politics or leadership, it's about how people behave when power shifts. If someone flatters you too quickly, be cautious. If they ask for your trust without demonstrating their own, be wary. On the other hand, your trustworthiness is a form of power. When people know that your word means something, that you protect confidences, that you're principled even when it's inconvenient, that reputation becomes a shield. It attracts alliances. It deters enemies. It makes your presence valuable. But again, don't waste it. Don't back people who haven't proven themselves. Don't invest in teams, friendships, or partnerships that haven't passed your quiet tests. Be generous with kindness, but measured with trust. A Machiavellian approach to trust is neither cynical nor naive. It's pragmatic. Trust is not infinite. It's a tool. It's leverage. And if you use it wisely, it multiplies. But if you spend it on the wrong people, the losses cut deeper than financial ruin. They cut into your influence, your clarity, your confidence. So carry your trust like a king carries his seal. Not hidden, but not easily granted, because once you give it, you're no longer watching. And that's when the wolves move. Take risks when the cost of doing nothing is greater. Risk, to Machiavelli, was not a moral issue. It wasn't about courage or recklessness. It was a calculation. And he believed that the greatest risk of all was often inaction. Many leaders, he observed, lost their power not because they moved too boldly, but because they hesitated when boldness was required. He wrote extensively about the tides of fortune, how they favored the agile, the decisive, and the prepared. But Machiavelli never advocated blind risk. Instead, he emphasized timing. The ability to recognize when the moment calls for boldness and when it rewards restraint. And the filter for making that call? Evaluate the cost of inaction. In your own life, how many opportunities have slipped by not because you took a bad risk, but because you waited too long? Didn't speak up, didn't start the project, didn't have the conversation. These are the quiet failures that accumulate. The Machiavellian thinker knows this and watches for it. Risks become wise when the alternative, stagnation, regret, erosion of control, is more damaging. A leader might gamble political capital to pass urgent reform. A business owner might pivot aggressively to avoid slow decline. An individual might confront a toxic relationship because silence is costing their peace. Machiavelli admired those who could move before they were desperate. He saw that power favors momentum and that hesitation invites vultures. In The Prince, he cited examples of rulers who failed because they hoped problems would resolve themselves. But nothing resolves itself in power. Problems grow unless addressed with speed and conviction. Calculated risk is also a confidence builder. When you move knowing full well what's at stake and you own the outcome, that's strength. Even if it doesn't work out, you've acted, you've stayed in motion. And in Machiavelli's world, motion is everything. Fortune is like a river. It overflows and changes course. Those who build dams and channels in advance survive the flood. Those who delay are washed away. So evaluate your current challenges. What are you avoiding? Where are you hesitating? What are you afraid to lose? And what are you losing already by doing nothing? That's the real risk, not the bold move, but the silence in its place. Machiavelli would urge you, don't fear risk, fear decay. Fear the slow erosion of your strength, your position, your passion. Because while failure from action can be reversed, the damage from inaction often goes unnoticed until it's too late. Let others seek fairness. You seek victory. There is a natural temptation, especially among those who consider themselves principled, to chase fairness. We want balance. We want justice. We want recognition for effort and reward for merit. But Machiavelli saw the world differently. He saw that life rarely rewards the just. The world, in his view, is not fair. It's strategic. So he offers this cold but powerful reminder. Let others seek fairness. You seek victory. It's not a license to be cruel. It's a call to be clear-eyed. Machiavelli knew that those who obsess over fairness are often the first to be taken advantage of. They argue about what should happen, while others are making moves to ensure what will happen. When you focus on fairness, you give away leverage. You rely on others to acknowledge your worth, your effort, your perspective. But when you shift your focus to victory, you stop waiting. You start engineering outcomes instead of requesting permission. Victory doesn't always mean domination. It means getting what you came for. It means winning the negotiation, the respect, the outcome, even if the path there doesn't look equal. It's the quiet parent who enforces the rule while the other debates it. It's the leader who makes the tough call and owns it rather than waiting for consensus. Fairness is a story we tell children to build cooperation, but victory is what adults are judged by, especially in arenas like business, law, politics, or leadership. People may talk about fairness, but they remember results. They follow those who win, not those who ask for a better deal and walk away empty-handed. Now, this doesn't mean you trample others. In fact, Machiavelli believed that smart power often appears fair, but behind the scenes, it's calculated, strategic. It gives only as much as necessary to maintain influence and preserve strength. The appearance of fairness without the naivete of dependence on it. So how do you live this philosophy? Stop expecting fairness to save you. Start preparing to win through competence, timing, and strategy. Speak less about what's deserved and more about what's achievable. Don't wait for the rules to be honored. Know how to bend them. And when others are distracted arguing about what's right, move forward and take what's yours. Machiavelli wasn't asking you to abandon morality. He was asking you to rise above illusion. Victory, when pursued intelligently, can include fairness, but it must never depend on it. Embrace discomfort. It is where power is forged. Comfort is a seductive trap. It makes you feel safe, settled, satisfied. But Machiavelli, in his brutal realism, knew that comfort is also where strength erodes. Embrace discomfort. It is where power is forged. Discomfort is not something to avoid. It's something to pursue. Because every growth spurt, every skill, every ounce of confidence you've ever earned came from a place of friction. Discomfort stretches your tolerance, sharpens your instincts, and tests your resilience. It introduces you to parts of yourself you didn't know existed and makes you decide whether to fold or rise. Machiavelli saw this in war and politics. Leaders who were too comfortable, who hadn't tasted failure or pressure, were easy to unseat. Why? Because comfort breeds softness. It dulls the senses. It creates blind spots. And most dangerously, it tricks you into thinking you are strong because you are unchallenged. But discomfort wakes you up. It reminds you that you are still alive in the fight. When you're uncomfortable, you're learning. You're adjusting. You're becoming. And here's the thing, discomfort doesn't always show up as crisis. Sometimes it's that awkward conversation you don't want to have, that new skill you keep delaying, that decision you know needs to be made, but you've been avoiding because it threatens your current routine. The longer you delay discomfort, the more power you leak. And the people who grow the most? They don't wait for discomfort to find them. They seek it. They put themselves in positions that stretch them. Not because they enjoy pain, but because they know what's on the other side. Strength, clarity, influence, mastery. This mindset rewires how you approach challenge. You stop avoiding stress and start using it. You stop seeing failure as humiliation and start seeing it as initiation. You stop fearing discomfort and start welcoming it as a forge. Machiavelli wouldn't coddle your insecurities. He'd walk you into the fire and say, "This is where kings are made." Not in the throne room, in the cold, in the dark, in the testing ground where your excuses die and your courage is born. So ask yourself, where am I avoiding discomfort? What conversation, challenge, or change have I postponed? And what part of me is still weak because of it? Your strength is already inside you. Discomfort is the key to unlock it. The calmest person in the room holds the power. Power is often imagined as loud, raised voices, bold gestures, dramatic declarations. But Machiavelli understood that real power doesn't need to announce itself. In fact, the most powerful person in any situation is often the one who speaks the least, the one who doesn't flinch, the one who watches, waits, and moves when it matters. The calmest person in the room holds the power. Calmness is a signal. It tells people that you are in control, not just of the situation, but of yourself. And that's rare, because most people are reactive. They let emotions drag them across conversations like leaves in the wind. When tension rises, they mirror it. When someone panics, they panic too. But the calm one, that's the person everyone looks to. That's the anchor in the storm. And when you become that person, you become the one others instinctively follow, even if you say little at all. Calmness is not apathy. It's not detachment. It's focus. It's composure. It's the ability to stay present, measured, and intentional, especially when everyone else is unraveling. This trait can't be faked. It's built through repetition, through discomfort, through being tested in moments where losing control is easy. It comes from knowing your values, your strengths, and your desired outcome. When you know who you are and where you're going, you no longer need to prove it. You can sit in silence and still be the most commanding presence in the room. Machiavelli understood that calm people control the tempo. They slow things down. They redirect emotion. They hold space between stimulus and response, and in that space, they make better decisions. In conflict, calmness is lethal. It frustrates opponents. It disrupts bullies. It exposes emotional instability in others, and it gives you clarity when others are blinded by ego or anxiety. Want to dominate a room? Don't raise your voice. Lower it. Don't move first. Move last. Don't react. Choose. And remember, the calm person isn't suppressing energy. They're conserving it, like a lion waiting for the precise moment to pounce. Calmness is not just confidence, it's control. And control is the true face of power. Don't ask for attention. Command it through presence. There's a hunger for recognition in most people, a craving to be seen, heard, validated. And in a world full of noise, the instinct is to shout louder, flash brighter, interrupt more often. But Machiavelli would tell you something different. Don't ask for attention. Command it through presence. Attention is not earned by volume. It's earned by value. When you walk into a room, you shouldn't have to announce yourself. People should feel it. There should be a quiet gravity to you, a calm, controlled intensity that draws eyes without you asking. Presence is the byproduct of intentionality. It's built from the way you stand, the way you listen, the way you pause before speaking. It's not about performance. It's about substance. When you say less, what you say matters more. When you move less, every movement carries weight. People sense presence. They may not be able to define it, but they react to it. It's that feeling when someone enters a meeting and everyone straightens up, when someone speaks with fewer words but gets more nods. That's not magic. That's presence, and it comes from alignment between who you are, what you value, and how you carry yourself. Machiavelli knew that those who chase attention give away their power. They become performers, not players. But those who cultivate presence receive attention without ever having to beg for it, because presence earns respect, and respect is the gateway to influence. So how do you build presence? Start with awareness. Eliminate nervous habits. Speak slower. Make deliberate eye contact. Get comfortable with silence. Respect yourself enough not to over-explain. Let your energy say, "I belong here," even if your voice never does. Most importantly, do the inner work. Presence comes from confidence, and confidence comes from competence. Master your craft. Know your value. Walk with the authority of someone who doesn't need attention to validate their worth. Let others chase applause. You walk in silence, and let the room adjust to you. If you are not respected, you are replaceable. Respect is not given, it's established. And in Machiavelli's world, it was a leader's most crucial asset. Without it, you're not seen as a figure of influence. You're seen as a temporary solution, someone useful until something better comes along. Machiavelli wrote extensively about the balance between being loved and being feared, but he always came back to a simple truth. Without respect, neither love nor fear can hold. Respect is the glue of lasting power. It's what makes people hesitate before crossing you, what makes your absence feel consequential, and what makes your presence carry weight. And contrary to modern misconceptions, respect doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being known as someone who stands for something and backs it up with action. In professional life, this is critical. Colleagues and leaders respect those who deliver, who set boundaries, and who don't crumble under pressure. If you consistently downplay your abilities, avoid confrontation, or let your voice be drowned out, you're not seen as modest, you're seen as dispensable. You blend in. You become part of the background, even if you're competent. That's not influence. That's invisibility. For those in midlife or beyond, this principle has sharper teeth. You've likely worked hard to build skills, networks, and achievements. But the cruel truth is that the world doesn't always honor experience. It honors relevance. Respect keeps you relevant. It demands that others acknowledge not just your history, but your continued presence. You earn it by speaking with authority, taking risks when necessary, and never letting yourself be undermined without response. Machiavelli would say that being disrespected is a slippery slope. Once others sense that you'll tolerate it, they feel no cost in dismissing you. First, it's your opinion ignored. Then it's your role diminished. Eventually, you're replaced by someone who commands the space you surrendered. But respect isn't about domination. It's about clarity. You show people how to treat you by what you tolerate and what you deliver. Do you show up on time? Do you hold your ground when challenged? Do you make decisions or always defer? These micro-behaviors signal to others whether you deserve a seat at the table or just happen to be sitting there. If you're struggling to be respected, ask, where am I being too soft? Where have I allowed erosion in my standards? And most importantly, what am I willing to do to reclaim my place? Respect is earned in moments. It's also lost in them. Machiavelli's advice is cold but real. If you don't demand respect, prepare to be replaced. Polish your strengths. Disguise your weaknesses. Everyone has flaws, but not everyone broadcasts them. Machiavelli's strategy was clear. If you cannot eliminate your weaknesses, you must hide them, and instead amplify your strengths until they define you. To him, perception mattered more than truth. And if people perceive you as strong, capable, and in control, then that becomes your reality, regardless of what's happening behind the curtain. This is not about being fake. It's about being strategic. Machiavelli knew that even the greatest leaders had vulnerabilities. The trick wasn't to erase them. It was to make sure they were never seen, never used, and never outshone their power. Think of Caesar's epilepsy, Roosevelt's paralysis, or Lincoln's depression. These men led nations not because they lacked weakness, but because they managed how the world saw them. In your own life, this means getting brutally honest with yourself. What are your strengths? Not just what you're good at, but what makes people respect you. It might be your calm in crisis, your ability to communicate, your financial instincts, or your empathy. Once you identify these, they must be sharpened like weapons. Your strengths must be so visible, so undeniable, that they become your signature. Now, your weaknesses. Everyone has them. But Machiavelli would say, the world has no obligation to forgive what you've failed to manage. If you're indecisive, prone to anger, disorganized, or insecure, do not wear these traits like a badge of authenticity. Hide them. Guard them. Compensate for them. Build habits, routines, or support systems that keep them from leaking into public view. This is especially important for leaders and those in influential positions. Weakness, once spotted, becomes a target. In high-stakes environments, people look for cracks, not always out of malice, but because human nature seeks certainty. When they find weakness, they question whether you can carry the load. They begin to plan around you, or worse, over you. But when you manage weakness well, it disappears from their view. And what remains? Strength, competence, presence. That's how authority is built, not through perfection, but through presentation. Polishing your strengths also has an internal effect. It builds confidence. You begin to define yourself not by where you've failed, but by what you're becoming. And as you reinforce your strong suits, you start seeing challenges as opportunities to apply them, further solidifying your power. Machiavelli's world was one of survival, reputation, and legacy. Yours might be different, but the principle holds. Master what makes you powerful. And never offer your weaknesses freely. The world respects strength, even when it's partially constructed. They will follow if you make them feel safe or afraid. This Machiavellian philosophy is among his most famous and most misunderstood. He didn't suggest being cruel. He suggested understanding people deeply. And in that understanding, he found a central truth. People follow when they feel secure, or when they fear the consequences of not following. Leadership, then, is about creating emotional conditions that inspire loyalty. For some, it's safety, clarity, stability. These leaders become anchors, those who create predictability in a chaotic world. They win followers by inspiring trust. Their consistency is their power. Their people know what to expect. And in that security, loyalty blooms. But in volatile environments, or when trust has not been earned, fear can be more effective. Fear does not require trust. It requires recognition of consequence. Machiavelli saw that fear could stabilize kingdoms when love could not. He famously wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if one cannot be both." And in truth, many leaders have found this to be accurate when facing resistance, betrayal, or high-stakes decision-making. The ideal, of course, is both, to be loved and feared, to offer safety, but also boundaries, to inspire warmth, but never appear weak. People follow when they feel held, whether that's by security or by accountability. In your career, you've likely seen this. Think of leaders you've respected. Some made you feel seen, valued, safe. Others you wouldn't dare cross. Both types inspired loyalty. The key was clarity. You knew where you stood. Machiavelli's insight was that leadership is not a popularity contest. It's a system of influence. If people only follow when they feel good, their loyalty is conditional. But if they follow because your presence creates structure, whether through safety or fear, they stay even when things get tough. To apply this, assess your own leadership. Do people follow you because you reassure them, or because they know your standards cannot be ignored? Are you being too soft, trying to be liked, only to find your authority diluted? Or have you leaned too far into fear, breeding silence instead of support? Balance is the art. You must show others they can trust you, but also that crossing you has consequence. Machiavelli would argue, a leader who can't command either emotion, security or fear, commands nothing. Confidence comes from knowing you are prepared to lose. This is perhaps one of the most paradoxical but powerful lessons of Machiavellian thought. True confidence doesn't come from a guarantee of success. It comes from being mentally prepared to lose into it and still moving forward with clarity and conviction. Because when you're no longer afraid of loss, you're free to act boldly, and boldness commands power. Machiavelli viewed fortune as a chaotic force. No one, no matter how skilled, could control every variable. But those who accepted this, who planned for loss, embraced risk, and still pressed forward, owned their confidence. Not because they were blind to danger, but because they were no longer paralyzed by it. When you accept that you might lose your job, a client, an argument, or even a reputation, you start making decisions from strength rather than fear. You no longer contort your choices to avoid discomfort. You speak plainly. You act decisively. You stop begging for approval. That's confidence. This doesn't mean you want to lose. It means you've accounted for the risk. You've prepared. And because you know you can survive the outcome, you act with composure. Imagine a general who has accepted the possibility of defeat, but also knows his strategy is sound, his men trained, and his cause worthy. That general leads with gravitas. This kind of grounded confidence is rare, but magnetic. People sense it. They follow those who seem unafraid to lose, because those people radiate clarity and courage. You become the person in the room who doesn't flinch, who doesn't over-explain, who moves forward while others are stuck in hesitation. Machiavelli would say, you are most powerful when you've divorced your identity from the outcome, because then nothing owns you, not your victories, not your losses, just your actions. And that is where real confidence lives, not in perfection, but in preparedness, not in the illusion of invincibility, but in the knowledge that even if you fall, you will rise, not broken, but refined. Never reveal your full strength until it's too late for them. There is a deep and enduring power in restraint. Machiavelli would have understood this better than anyone. To reveal your full strength too early is to give away the element of surprise, the most decisive advantage in any contest of influence, authority, or survival. When you show all your cards, people begin to measure you, adapt to you, and prepare their defenses. But when your strength is revealed after they've misjudged you, that's when the tables turn irreversibly. In The Prince, Machiavelli warned rulers not to overextend, not to boast, and not to flaunt their intentions. Strategic ambiguity keeps rivals unsure, off balance, and hesitant. It creates doubt. Doubt slows action. And in that hesitation, you gain time, often the most valuable commodity in high-stakes environments. Consider modern parallels. A seasoned executive doesn't enter the room by declaring everything they've done or can do. They allow others to underestimate them, to miscalculate, even to talk down. And then, when it matters, when the deal is on the table or the decision needs to be made, they reveal competence so sharp, so unexpected, it takes the air out of the room. This isn't about being deceptive, it's about being deliberate. You don't owe the world your full arsenal at every moment. In fact, the more people know about the extent of your capability, the more they'll try to contain, challenge, or compete with it. Sometimes it is wiser to let others feel overconfident, to let them underestimate your resolve, your intelligence, or your readiness. And then, when the moment is right, you strike with clarity and force. There is also a psychological advantage in delayed strength. When someone believes they have the upper hand, they let their guard down, they get sloppy, their ego expands, they reveal their own strategies. This creates windows of opportunity you wouldn't have had if they were defending from the start. Machiavelli might call this soft warfare, the art of allowing the enemy to believe they are winning, right up until they aren't. The key is control. You must be in full control of your own ego. The desire to be recognized, applauded, or feared must take a back seat to the long game. Real strength is disciplined. It waits, it watches, it hits when the risk is lowest and the gain is highest. So don't rush to prove yourself. Let your silence build tension. Let your patience grow anticipation. And when your strength finally steps forward, let it be so undeniable, so overwhelming, that by the time they understand who they were dealing with, it's already too late. Do not speak when angry. Speak when it shakes the room. Anger is a natural emotion, but Machiavelli would warn you that unfiltered expression of it can be disastrous. In high-stakes arenas, from courts to corporate boardrooms to personal relationships, the one who loses emotional control is the one who gives away power. Speaking in anger often leads to miscalculation. You reveal too much. You say more than you should. And once spoken, words cannot be unsaid. But staying silent in your anger doesn't mean you ignore it. It means you channel it. Anger, when mastered, becomes fuel. It sharpens your clarity. It motivates precision. And most importantly, it teaches you patience. You don't speak to relieve yourself. You speak to move the room. Machiavelli's advice to rulers was often cold and calculated. He believed that power was preserved not by honesty, but by timing. Similarly, when you're angry, it's not the time to react. It's the time to plan. Let others show their emotions. Let them argue, accuse, and unravel. You, meanwhile, hold the silence. And when the moment comes, when it's no longer emotion but strategy, you speak. And when you do speak, it lands differently. It carries weight. People listen more closely because you are not the one who always reacts. You are the one who waits, watches, and then delivers judgment with calm force. This is what it means to shake the room, to break the silence, not with chaos, but with deliberate power. For those in their 40s, 50s, and beyond, this lesson grows even more relevant. You've learned through experience that not every battle is worth fighting, and not every insult requires a reply. You realize that emotional control is not weakness, it's maturity. You save your words for moments that matter. And because you don't speak lightly, when you finally do, it shifts the dynamic. It turns heads. It ends arguments. People remember the words that follow silence far more than the ones that come out in a shouting match. Why? Because they come with tension. And tension demands attention. That's how influence is built, not through volume, but through impact. So the next time anger rises, don't suppress it. Study it. Harness it. Let it teach you what matters. And then speak, not to vent, but to lead. Speak not when your heart is hot, but when your voice can command the room. That's not just emotional intelligence, that's strategic speech. Influence others by shaping their expectations. Machiavelli's genius wasn't just in how he saw power, it was in how he saw perception. He understood that people rarely react to what is. They react to what they expect. And if you can shape expectations, you control outcomes without lifting a sword. This principle is at the heart of persuasion. Influence doesn't start with what you say. It starts with what people think you will say. When you manage those assumptions, you gain the upper hand. Imagine walking into a negotiation where the other party believes you are desperate. Their offer will reflect that belief. But if you manage to convey calm confidence, even if the circumstances are hard, they recalibrate. The offer changes. You change the expectation. This is why Machiavelli advocated for rulers to manage their image carefully, to appear generous when strategic, to appear merciful when it served the state. It wasn't about deception for the sake of cruelty. It was about shaping how others prepare to deal with you. When people expect resistance, they prepare differently than if they expect surrender. If you let them expect predictability, you become vulnerable. But if you master surprise and subtlety, your influence multiplies. Expectation setting also gives you space to exceed rather than disappoint. If you promise little and deliver more, you gain trust and admiration. But if you overpromise, even with good intent, and fail, the result is resentment. It's better to be quietly competent and consistently impressive than loudly ambitious and often short. In social dynamics, this can also be used for diffusing conflict. People often prepare for a fight. But if you respond with calm logic, with unexpected empathy, you disarm them. Their energy collapses. You've shaped their expectation and then exceeded it. That's influence. This strategy is especially powerful in leadership. Employees, family members, colleagues, they all operate based on what they think you'll do. If you remain emotionally steady, morally consistent, and intellectually strategic, they'll begin to expect that from you. And in time, that expectation becomes your brand. People act differently around someone they view as stable and strategic. Their behavior improves because they've adjusted their own expectations to meet your standard. This is not manipulation. It's stewardship. It's taking responsibility for the emotional tone and psychological atmosphere around you. Leaders do this. Parents do this. Mentors do this. And the stronger your influence, the more your ability to shape expectations becomes a superpower. So don't just focus on results. Focus on anticipation. Be thoughtful in how you position yourself, understate your plans, over-deliver on your actions. And when people come to expect your strength, your fairness, or your silence, then every deviation becomes a tool of persuasion. Be firm in decision, flexible in method. This principle might be the most practical and the most liberating. Machiavelli believed that success belonged to those who were both anchored and adaptive. The leader, he said, must hold a clear goal, but adjust tactics as reality shifts. In his words, Fortune is a woman, and to master her, one must be bold. But boldness without agility becomes stubbornness, and stubbornness is how empires fall. To be firm in decision means to know what you want, what you value, and where you're going. It means having a clear North Star. But to be flexible in method means you're not attached to how you get there. You can pivot, improvise, and reroute without losing sight of the mission. This is crucial wisdom for those navigating change, whether in careers, relationships, or personal growth. You may have a vision for your life, but life rarely unfolds in straight lines. Economic shifts, family needs, health issues all demand flexibility. The immature mind resists. It clings to one plan, one method, one identity. The mature mind adapts without giving up the destination. In politics, Machiavelli saw rulers lose everything because they clung to tradition or routine. The wise ones evolved. They shifted alliances, changed policies, even reinvented their image because their eyes were always on survival, not comfort. In your life, this could mean shifting strategy without losing integrity. It might mean taking a job you didn't plan for, starting over in a new city, or letting go of methods that once worked but no longer do. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. Being firm in decision gives you purpose. Being flexible in method gives you mobility. And mobility is what allows you to survive chaos, respond to opportunity, and outmaneuver your opponents. Imagine a tree with deep roots but flexible branches. The wind may bend it, but it doesn't break. Flexibility also fosters creativity. If you're not locked into one method, you start seeing new options. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What can I do with this?" That shift is what separates reactive people from strategic ones. So, decide with strength, but adapt with grace. The world belongs to those who can do both. Outlast them. Most power is patience in disguise. In The Prince, Machiavelli may not have used the word patience often, but its strategic weight is felt throughout his writing. He consistently showed that the most powerful individuals weren't always the strongest, smartest, or most charismatic. They were the ones who endured. Power often doesn't come from winning fast. It comes from refusing to be broken. To outlast someone, whether a rival, a critic, or even a phase of life, requires endurance, restraint, and deep strategy. It means understanding that not every battle is worth fighting immediately. Sometimes the greatest move is no move at all, waiting while others waste their energy, their credibility, or their composure. Modern life rarely celebrates patience. We're taught to chase, hustle, and respond immediately. But Machiavelli's world and the real world beneath today's surface is governed by timing. And timing, more often than not, belongs to the patient. Patience is a form of discipline. It means knowing when not to speak, when not to react, when to let others reveal themselves. When your opponent rushes, trying to provoke a mistake, the one who stays composed usually walks away with the upper hand. There's a phrase in political strategy, "Let them hang themselves with their own rope." Machiavelli would agree. The impulsive expose themselves. The patient allow others to stumble first. In leadership, patience often means giving ideas time to work. It's resisting the temptation to chase every shiny new tactic. It's trusting the long game, because real power doesn't come from frantic action, but from rooted presence. It's the confidence to say, "I don't need to move now. I'll wait for the right moment." Even in relationships, patience is underrated. The person who can hold space during conflict, who doesn't escalate out of ego, who gives others room to grow or fall, commands a deeper influence. Patience, in this sense, is emotional strength. There's also a resilience element. Life will test you. You'll be underestimated, ignored, even dismissed. Machiavelli knew that success wasn't always about being first. It was about being last. When others have burned out, given up, or turned bitter, the one still standing, still moving, still quietly shaping the field, that person becomes inevitable. So how do you cultivate this kind of strategic patience? Detach your self-worth from short-term results. Long-term players don't panic over temporary setbacks. Develop stillness. If you can wait without anxiety, you disarm the urgency of others. Study cycles. Many situations come back around. Those who wait recognize when it's their moment. Reinforce your stamina. Physically, emotionally, spiritually. Whatever helps you stay grounded longer than others. The world rarely sees patience as power, but Machiavelli knew the one who can wait without losing focus controls the pace. And in the long run, the one who controls the pace controls the game. Fear of failure fades when the purpose is strong enough. Machiavelli understood something about fear that still speaks to us centuries later. Fear itself isn't the enemy. Aimlessness is. When people lack a clear mission, fear fills the gap. But when the purpose burns strong enough, fear loses its grip. It becomes background noise. Fear of failure is natural. We've all felt it. That nervous energy before a big decision, the anxiety of being judged, the creeping doubt that whispers, "What if I can't pull this off?" But here's the truth Machiavelli would likely embrace. Fear thrives in the absence of direction. Give fear a clear target to submit to, and it will. When your why is bigger than your fear, you act anyway. That's what separates the ambitious from the stagnant. The parent who overcomes doubt to protect their family. The entrepreneur who risks embarrassment to build something lasting. The leader who defies public opinion for the long-term good. In each case, fear is present, but purpose leads. Machiavelli admired rulers who were driven not by approval, but by vision. He saw purpose as a weapon. The stronger and more focused your goal, the more you can endure. Because now you're not acting out of ego, but necessity. And purpose-driven necessity bends fear. This is also how courage works. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's movement in spite of it. And that movement is always powered by something deeper. A cause, a belief, a mission, a responsibility. When you know what you're fighting for, failing doesn't stop you. It refines you. This lesson is especially vital for those later in life, people in their 40s, 50s, and beyond, who may be tempted to play it safe. Fear of starting over, fear of wasted time, fear of rejection. But if your purpose is real, it will override those fears. You begin to realize the greater fear is not trying at all. So how do you make this practical? Clarify your purpose. Write it down. Say it aloud. Let it become part of your daily focus. Visualize the cost of inaction. What happens if you don't try? That fear is often more motivating than failure. Reframe failure as fuel. If you know what you're aiming at, failure isn't defeat, it's feedback. Commit publicly. Tell others what you're pursuing. Accountability reinforces purpose and quiets fear. Machiavelli's advice wasn't about fearlessness. It was about calculated boldness. And boldness requires a foundation. That foundation is purpose. Without it, fear wins. With it, fear becomes noise. Ignore the noise. Follow the flame. Craft your myth before others write your story. One of Machiavelli's most enduring ideas is the importance of image. In The Prince, he wrote about the need for rulers to carefully cultivate how they're perceived. Why? Because people don't respond to your intentions, they respond to your myth. And if you don't write that myth yourself, someone else will. We all live inside stories, our own and the ones others project onto us. These stories shape everything. How people treat us, how opportunities arrive or don't, how much influence we carry. Machiavelli's wisdom? Craft your myth deliberately. Be the author of your narrative, not the passive subject. What does this look like in practice? It starts with understanding that you are not just a person. You are a symbol to others. Your words, your actions, your body language, your online presence, your silence, it all tells a story. If you leave it to chance, people will fill in the blanks, and they often fill them with assumptions, gossip, or projections that don't serve you. But when you actively shape the story, everything changes. You become memorable, consistent, strategic. People begin to repeat your version of you. Think of historical figures, Churchill, Lincoln, Cleopatra, even Machiavelli himself. Each of them crafted a public image that outlived them. They knew that legacy is not built by facts alone, but by narrative. You must be seen not just as capable, but as inevitable. In your own life, this might mean building a professional reputation, creating a consistent presence, speaking with purpose, dressing in a way that signals who you are. It means knowing your values and displaying them visibly. It also means using storytelling. Don't just say what you do, explain why you do it, where it came from, what you're building toward. Turn your experience into legend. People remember stories more than resumes. Machiavelli would caution, don't confuse myth-building with lying. This isn't about fakery, it's about framing. The truth can be told in many ways. Choose the version that empowers you. So, how do you start? Decide your identity. Who do you want to be in people's minds? Control your first impressions. They stick. Make them count. Be consistent. People remember repetition. Let your actions reflect your narrative. Tell your own story before others tell it for you. In meetings, interviews, conversations, lead with your version. You are a character in the minds of others. Craft that character with intention. Because in Machiavelli's world and ours, power belongs to those whose myths echo louder than their mistakes. Never confuse kindness with weakness, especially your own. Machiavelli was not known for sentimentality, but his teachings weren't devoid of nuance. One of the subtler lessons we can draw from his work is this. True strength and kindness are not opposites, but people will assume they are if you let them. And if you confuse your own kindness for weakness, you risk surrendering your influence. It's a common trap, especially for mature individuals who've learned the value of empathy, patience, and grace. The world often mistakes these traits for softness. But Machiavelli would warn, if your kindness isn't backed by the capacity for strength, it will be taken for granted or used against you. You can be kind and also fierce. You can be compassionate and also immovable when it matters. In fact, the most respected people often hold both, the gentle voice and the steel backbone. In leadership, this balance is critical. If you're always accommodating, your team may stop taking you seriously. But if you mix empathy with high standards, support with structure, you lead with dignity, not dominance. That balance creates loyal, high-performing groups. In relationships, too, kindness without boundaries invites overreach. If you always give, always forgive, always say yes, some people will push further, not because they're evil, but because human nature tests limits. Kindness, to be meaningful, must be protected. The most important insight here? Don't misread your own intentions. If you're kind because you fear rejection, conflict, or loss, then yes, it's rooted in weakness. But if you're kind because you choose to be, because it reflects your values, your wisdom, your self-respect, that's strength. Machiavelli respected strategic compassion. A ruler who could forgive at the right moment, who could be merciful without appearing soft, earned loyalty without losing control. To embody this in your own life, speak kindly, but don't dilute your message. Say the truth with warmth, not apology. Give, but know your limit. Set boundaries without guilt. Be slow to anger, but swift to act when crossed. Let others know you are measured, not passive. Remember, kindness is a choice, not a default. When it's chosen from strength, it carries far more power. In the end, kindness isn't the opposite of power, it's a form of it. But only when you own it, guard it, and deliver it with clarity. That's what Machiavelli would advise. Be both the velvet glove and the iron hand beneath it. Confidence is earned through hard choices, not easy wins. It's easy to feel confident when things go your way, when people agree with you, when the road is smooth, when you win. But that kind of confidence is fragile. It's situational. It's dependent on outside circumstances. Machiavelli would argue that true confidence is forged in fire, not gift by luck. It's not the product of easy wins. It's the result of hard, uncomfortable, often lonely choices, the kind that sharpen your edge and define your core. Think about the moments in your life when you grew the most. Were they when everything was going well? Or were they when you had to make a difficult decision, walk away from something comfortable, or hold your ground in the face of opposition? Machiavelli believed that fortune, the randomness of life, favors the bold, but it is preparation and will that win in the end. When you make the hard choice, especially when no one else sees the value in it, you build inner strength. You tell yourself, I can survive the tension. I can act even when it's uncomfortable. I can live with the cost of my principles. Let's say you're in a position where everyone expects you to stay quiet, to go along with a poor decision, to laugh at something that bothers you, to support something you don't believe in. It would be easy to stay silent. That's the easy win. Social harmony at the cost of self-respect. But when you speak up, even trembling, you make the hard choice. You risk disapproval to remain aligned with your integrity. That's where confidence is born. Hard choices often come with pain, ending a relationship that's no longer good for you, turning down short-term profit for long-term value, choosing solitude over shallow acceptance, saying no when everyone expects a yes. These are the crucibles that build unshakable confidence, because every time you make a difficult choice, you learn something vital. You can depend on yourself. You don't need the world to give you permission. You can be your own anchor. This is especially powerful later in life, when you've seen what compromise costs. In your 40s, 50s, or 60s, you may carry regrets about times you stayed silent, avoided conflict, or chose comfort over courage. But the truth is, it's never too late to start making hard choices. And with every one, confidence returns, not in the loud, arrogant way, but in the deep, silent way that says, I trust myself now. Machiavelli wrote for those who ruled under pressure. He knew that soft choices lead to soft men, and soft men do not survive hard times. But when you choose discomfort for the sake of strength, you step into the kind of authority that no one can give you, and no one can take away. So don't chase easy wins. They're fleeting. Chase the choice that demands more of you. That's where your edge is. That's where confidence is waiting. They remember how you made them feel. Make them feel your presence. People may forget your words, they may forget your actions, but they will not forget how you made them feel. Machiavelli might not have said those exact words, but the principle is deeply aligned with his philosophy. Power, real power, is not just about what you say. It's about the emotional imprint you leave behind. Your presence is your legacy. When you walk into a room, your energy arrives before your voice. People sense confidence. They also sense hesitation, desperation, or neediness. Machiavelli understood that appearances matter, and so does atmosphere. A leader doesn't just command through orders, they command through presence, a kind of gravitational pull that changes the room. So how do you cultivate that? Presence begins with self-possession. When you are grounded, others feel it. You're not constantly adjusting yourself to others' expectations. You don't rush to fill silences. You listen fully. You take your time. That kind of stillness is powerful and rare. It makes people lean in. It makes them remember. Machiavelli would say, control the optics of your character. This isn't vanity, it's strategy. The way you dress, speak, carry yourself, and respond to pressure, all of it tells people how to treat you. If you shrink, they'll talk over you. If you assert without apology, they'll stop and consider you. But presence goes deeper. It's also emotional intelligence. When you make others feel seen, valued, or challenged in just the right way, they connect that emotion to you. And emotional memory lasts longer than logic. Imagine two people delivering the same message. One is forgettable, the other leaves a lasting impression. What's the difference? One recited, the other embodied. One played it safe, the other risked connection. This applies in leadership, relationships, and even parenting. Your tone of voice, your eye contact, your attention, it's all part of your presence. And when it's intentional, people walk away feeling your influence, even if they can't explain it. Presence also includes boundaries. When you calmly refuse to engage in gossip, or when you leave a conversation that drains you, or when you simply don't explain yourself, people feel that. It communicates, I know who I am, and that feeling stays with them. This is especially powerful as you age. In your 40s, 50s, or 60s, you've lived enough to know that being liked is overrated. But being felt, being respected, remembered, that's a different kind of impact. It's not about noise. It's about signal. When you make people feel safe, challenged, or awakened, even momentarily, they don't forget you. Not really. Your name stays with them. Your energy lingers. Your presence becomes a symbol of strength, of clarity, of confidence. And that's Machiavellian in the best way. Not manipulation, but mastery. Not showmanship, but substance. Not shouting to be heard, but being felt even after you leave. So the next time you enter a room, remember, they won't recall every word, but they'll remember the way your presence made them feel. Make it count. Control the narrative, or someone else will. Machiavelli understood that truth isn't always what happened. It's what people believe happened. In a world driven by perception, controlling the narrative is not vanity. It's survival. It's influence. It's strategy. If you don't shape your story, someone else will, often to your disadvantage. Your narrative is how people explain you when you're not in the room. It's the version of events, choices, and character they carry about you. And unless you take deliberate control of that image, it will be filled in by rumor, assumption, or the agendas of others. Controlling the narrative means mastering both what you communicate and when. It's not about being dishonest. It's about being selective. It's about choosing the right moments to speak, the right details to reveal, and the right tone to reinforce your reputation. This applies in personal relationships, careers, and leadership. You want to be known as decisive? Then you must be seen making decisions, not just talking about them. You want to be respected for integrity? Then make sure your values are visible, not just internal. In times of crisis, controlling the narrative becomes even more critical. A leader who steps forward early, names the issue, sets the tone, and offers a path forward becomes the anchor. Even if the solution is imperfect, the ownership is powerful. Most people think the facts will speak for themselves. They don't. People fill gaps with emotion and bias. And if you don't actively direct the narrative, you invite misinterpretation. That's not paranoia. It's reality. And Machiavelli would tell you, silence is not strength if it leaves you undefended. So audit your narrative. What are people saying about you? What do they assume? What are you allowing to go unchallenged? Then decide, intelligently, calmly, how to reshape it. Through your actions, through your communication, through your presence. Your story is already being told. Make sure you're the one writing it. Power is not taken, it is assumed. Many people wait for permission to lead. They wait to be chosen, to be titled, to be granted a seat at the table. But Machiavelli knew better. Power is not taken. It is assumed. And in assuming it, confidently, calmly, decisively, you begin to possess it. This doesn't mean you walk in and declare yourself ruler of the room. It means you behave as if you already belong at the highest level of influence, long before it's confirmed. People respond to those who carry themselves with assumed authority, because most are looking for leadership, even if they won't admit it. Assumed power begins internally. It's how you view yourself, how you speak when you offer an idea, how you carry silence without shrinking. It's the absence of apology, the clarity of voice, the way you occupy space, not just physically, but energetically. This kind of power doesn't beg. It doesn't seek approval. It moves as if the position is already earned, and in doing so, makes others believe it is. That's the paradox Machiavelli revealed. You don't wait for power to be given. You assume it into being. You lead first, and the recognition follows. You act with conviction, and the authority crystallizes. Of course, this only works if it's backed by competence. You must have substance beneath the confidence. But once that's there, you don't need to ask. You simply step into it. In a room full of hesitation, the person who assumes power naturally becomes the one others defer to. Not because they demanded it, but because they wore it first. So stop waiting, stop shrinking, assume the power you've prepared for, and let the world rise to meet your reflection.